So thank you so much, Rick, for being on the show. This is your third time, I believe.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for being here.
Am I
Happy
the
to have
most
you.
famous then, or am I just on the list?
By far the most famous. So how you been?
Very good, very good. Business has been great. The industry's still clamoring around pretty good, doing good work around the markets. And so, although a lot of people got killed by the COVID and everything else, our business has been kind of benefited from most of that. So we've adapted and kept it cruising, and now we're just kind of trying to keep it going in the upward direction.
Yeah. So for anybody that doesn't know who you are, which I find that hard to believe, can you introduce yourself?
Yep. So I'm one of the partners in the Red Rock companies, which is both a general contracting firm, a pool building firm. We've got a number of internal licenses like plumbing and electrical and stuff now because we're a little bit more diverse. But essentially, we are a design build general contractor, and we specialize and we're well known mostly for real high end pools and outdoor environments. And then but kind of secretly and behind the scenes, we do quite a bit of really high end luxury construction as well for clients. Some of that's been seen, or some of that's been put on our websites and stuff. Most of our websites and our social pages have been kind of quiet for a few years. We're about to kind of spool those back up. Just because we didn't have the time to manage it and really didn't need to, but we know we need to kind of focus on that. But our biggest focus, we originally were trying to find a lane. Should we be a home builder? Should we be a pool builder? Should we be a landscaper? I think we figured out our lane was we just want to do really cool shit, and as long as it kind of fits the right clientele, we from gun tunnels to go-kart tracks to swimming pools to shark tanks, as long as it's something cool, dynamic, and different, it's really, caught our eye, and then we've been able to prove to clients we can do that work for them.
So Red Rock Contractors, we build cool shit.
That should be the tagline.
That should be on a shirt.
It should be on a shirt for sure.
We need to put that on a rock and replace the one that's at the office.
Yep, our employees would definitely wear those shirts for sure.
Hell yeah!
Yep, for sure. I mean, that's the gist of it, right? We do standard stuff on it as a business as well. We get recognized for the cool shit.
Hell yeah! And we're gonna jump all into that, but we already cracked open our beers and you poured some whiskey.
Yep.
But we usually go over the things that we're drinking on the show. In this episode, I'm drinking one of the Seven Brothers. I've never heard of this brand in my life. I think they're from somewhere else, but Easy IPA, and surprisingly, it's really good. What you got, Justin?
I got Hoppy Pale, which is also by Seven Brothers. And I'm not a big hops guy. If I had to rate this, I'd give it like a 6. It's not bad.
A 6?
A 6.
What would you normally rate a hoppy beer?
At this first time I've rated a beer.
Okay.
And I'm going to say 6, thinking that I think a good beer would land around 8. Anything above that, excellent. So I'm saying 6, and I would put that close to maybe like a Hefeweizen.
Okay. So have you had a 10 beer before?
No, I just started this rating system right now. So.
Okay. Do you think you've ever had a 10 beer?
No, I think just like Portnoy, man. I think you got to reserve that 10. Has Portnoy ever given a 10? No, he hasn't. Mike says no. So no. So no, I've never had a 10 beer.
Well, when you get a 10, it's over, right?
Then you're done.
Can't top it.
Can't top it. We can't try it anymore. So
yeah.
What you got, Rick?
I'm actually drinking some Blanton's that was nicely handed to me, and it's very smooth sipping, a little bit of ice on it. I got a Coke next to it, but I couldn't destroy it with a Coke, so we're just going straight Blanton's.
Can't dilute
on the rocks.
That beautifulness.
That bottle is pretty dope, I must say. That is pretty cool. We got a horse jockey on there with a horse.
Every bottle has a different horse on top, and you can collect them.
Really?
Yeah. They sell these little Blanton's cork holders, and you can get all the different horses. I think there's 12.
So on your scale, what is this?
So I drink a lot of bourbon, decent amount of whiskeys. I would say that's right in the 9 range. That's a
nice.
good solid. It's it's a handcrafted special short batch mix, signed by the artist that created the savers. So that's a pretty good whiskey.
It's got the name of the guy who worked on it or put it in the bottle or whatever, and it's Rick.
It's actually Rick. Rick number.
What are the chances?
Rick,
shout out to Rick.
Rick 56.
Yep, I think that's what it is. Yep, Rick number 56. That's the one.
That's awesome.
And we got Rick number 1 on the podcast, so that works out.
And how's that glass? Is that the right glass?
That works very well.
Okay.
Aerates it well. The ice was solid, big chunk, so we're good. You guys did a good presentation of the bourbon.
We're winning at this little cocktail party.
Yeah. If the rest of the show goes downhill, at least the drinks were good.
The show wasn't that great, 3 hours, but whiskey part was my favorite part.
So I'm not a big beer drinker, but in my same complex across the parking lot now, Pedal House is putting in a whole new brew house. So they're going to start
Ah.
brewing beer next door. So it's starting to smell like dog food around there because of
Oh,
making all the hops and stuff go off. But they're going to have a tiny little tasting room, kind of like Santan Brewery has at their brewery, and we'll be able to walk right across the parking lot and have a couple beers.
not to drag this off pools, but have you ever built a brewery?
We have not done a beer brewery yet. We've done a couple restaurants.
Yeah.
We've done some both normal restaurants and like commissary kitchens that do prepping food for for the restaurants and distribute. But we haven't got into the closest thing is the medical marijuana side of our business, which is another side piece, and that's kind of more scientifically complex than you would think, especially when they get into the extraction labs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But watching these guys assemble this building across the street, it's a legitimate investment. The amount of stainless steel tanks and hoses and lines. You guys have done
It's
some of that.
sick.
Have you guys
We've
done
never
that?
done brewery stuff. We've done process piping for we've done glycol stuff and nothing ever that technical. It would be cool though.
Yeah, for
to
sure.
Get into that.
Yeah, it looks like a good time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Justin.
Well, yeah. So just for anybody who may be tuning in and doesn't know your background, maybe you give us the Cliff Notes version of, what your background was, how you got into pools, and kind of the timeline to get to here. Because I think you had an engineering background, right?
Yeah, somewhat. I'm as close to an engineer as you can get without being smart enough to pass the test. So,
Perfect.
I started in the trades growing up a little bit. That was the way to make money. Most of my jobs early were construction. I did a little stucco work. I had one of my sister's best friends' dad owned Superstition Contracting. I would frame for him in the summers, so I got in the home building side of stuff. Always was handy. Always was able to assemble projects in my head or see how parts go together without instructions, and so seemed to be good at it. I could make great money compared to like the car wash job in the summer, that kind of stuff. And so I had started in that business. I was never a great student. I had good grades, but I was not a good student. I was very, probably OD or ADD. So I was usually in trouble more than I was getting good grades. I would get, B's and A's, but keep myself out of trouble if I could. I was graduating high school, was going to ASU to be something. No idea what I was going to do.
What was your major?
I ended up being in construction management engineering.
Okay.
So, but I didn't know what I was going to do going there. Everybody, I did the aptitude tests and I was going to be an engineer. And to be honest with you, in high school, I didn't know what the hell that meant.
Yeah.
And I think one of my counselors was directing me towards like electrical engineer, which I probably would have hated.
Mhm.
And like just on a random whim, I was in trouble. So I was in the front office, doing something. I either came late or got thrown out of class or something. And the counselor was in there and he said he had got a flyer for Arizona State University's construction program, had like a dinner like 3 days from now. And he thought it'd be a good fit for me. And I'm like, so professional construction worker? That it doesn't, I'm not sure. I'm doing that now. I don't know that I want to make a profession out of it. To be honest with you, it was probably the best thing that could have happened. I ended up going to Arizona State University, got a construction, at the time it was construction engineering and management. Now I think they just call it management. It's about 50% of the load of a civil engineer. So you get a lot of the engineering, but you don't have to do all of it.
Mhm.
And then the rest of it's business management background and construction. And so they do contracts and estimating and scheduling and those kind of things and get you through contracts administration, like teach you a lot of the business side. So it ended up being, for where I'm at today, it couldn't have been a more perfect plan. And I didn't plan it. It just kind of fell in my lap, trying to keep myself out of trouble. And I was always good at math, science, and school. I just couldn't get into it. But at the college level, the construction school really just fit with me. I was great at it. It was interesting to me. So I would pay attention. I would get good grades. I, did well in my class, and got really interested in it. And while I was doing that, I was still working full time. My parents helped me a little through school, but really didn't have the financial capacity to pay for most of my school. So I paid for most of my school. And got myself through college with a full-time job as a construction superintendent for a home building company, which is a Habitat for Humanity at the time.
Oh, nice.
2 or 3 years prior to that, I was working for Electrical Contractor every summer and most of my evenings after work. So I picked up a lot of electrical knowledge. That was a kind of heavy contractor. We did all kinds of street lights and traffic signals and runway lighting. So learned a lot of equipment use. And then started running my own framing contracting business while I was going to school and kind of being the superintendent on the weekends for this company. And rolled out of school looking for a construction job, got hired as a general contractor for a manufacturing company. So really, I got given way too much credit and got a job I should have never got. Got thrown into a couple of huge projects that I had to dig in deep and figure them out. And luckily, it was kind of owner build type projects. It was their project. I was the GC. So it worked out really well. I didn't have to be smart on the budgets and the numbers, but I worked through that process, and slowly but surely decided that I started traveling for them and working out of state, and I wanted to be back home, so I decided to pull my trigger and get my own business. Had a bunch of licenses in place and was starting to do that, and then just parlayed that to where I am today. We started a construction company. We wanted to be a custom home builder. We weren't digging ditches or scraping popcorn ceilings. We weren't custom home builders to boot, but we did it a couple houses off the bat. Rolled through that business and was doing that for 3 or 4 years, I think, before we decided to start building our own pools. We were hiring pool builders to work for us, and in today's world, not complex projects, but really didn't find a pool builder that kind of had the knowledge or the expertise that we thought they should have, even though we were pretty low level at the time. But we just knew it looked like there was a lot of opportunity to do it better and right. And so we slowly did that and started a pool business. My partner at the time had done a little bit of pool business stuff, knew some people in the industry. Him and his dad owned a scrape and clean business for swimming pools for a couple of years. So we kind of had some decent connections. And so we just slowly but surely started rolling into that. And it really, we saw the opportunity, but then once we got into the business, we saw how big that opportunity was. The industry's come a long way since we've been in it. Early on, there wasn't much education options. There wasn't a way to learn how to build pools. We were kind of really stunned by that. I'm a learner now. Like, I love reading and learning and getting more information. And so when we started doing the pool side, we were starving for that, and there was just nothing. We talked to other pool builders about a surge tank or a negative, like nobody knew the math or the knowledge and the way to get there. And so we decided to start learning that. I've got a reasonable engineering background. I'm good at math. I can figure this stuff out. And then we started running into groups like Genesis and APSP, and they had some options available. So slowly but surely, we just learned that, you look at our current market here in Arizona, we were trying to be a custom home builder. We were trying to be a pool builder. And if you were to, at the time, and even today, if you were to list out 5 amazing pool builders in any market, it's pretty tough to really find 5 amazing pool builders. There's certain good pool builders across the country, don't get me wrong. But when you look at most given markets, though, and talk about amazing custom home builders, talk to architects, so it's pretty easy to find some high-end kick-ass guys that, generational companies, been doing it for years. They really know what they're doing. But on the pool side, there wasn't a lot of that. I mean,
You're right.
there was a lot of pool builders, and there was a lot of like big dollar pool builders building hundreds of pools or thousands of pools. But when you looked at the high quality, really technical stuff, I'm like, that's an opening. Let's go that way. And learn more and be that guy. Might as well fill the void instead of trying to fight uphill with all the rest of these guys. And so that allowed us to get into that market over time. And we, went for education and learned everything we could and worked through that process to get to where we've got the expertise, the knowledge, and the education now that we can pull off the most technical builds that you can come up with.
And that's crazy because in the Arizona market, you would think this would be the place that you could find 5 good builders. And it feels like the good builders that I know of, I mean, there's good builders here now, but back then, I know what you're saying. Like, you couldn't have picked 5 high-end builders and they would have been in other states. Weird.
Yeah, there'd be other states and just an industry as a whole. I mean, most of pools were just a hole in the ground,
Yeah.
and slowly but surely architects and other more educated designers, I think, got involved and started coming up with concepts. But there wasn't anybody sophisticated in the industry to figure out the concepts, and so there was just more trial and error. And we see that today. We look at, there's local builders, and I do enough work across the country now, and design wise, there's big builders that build thousands of pools a year, and then they get this one project that just derails them, because they just don't have the odd technical skills to pull those off, and then they get themselves in trouble, or we got to come in and help fix a problem. You've plumbed them for, when we had our plumbing company, we were literally teaching and explaining to pool builders like how to do it, like
Hmm.
this is what they do. But it's funny, it's a real weird transient industry. I think it was super easy to get into, pretty easy to stay in, and as long as you were building, you know, boxes of water in the ground, the plumber knew how to plumb it, the excavation guy knew how to dig it, the shotcrete guys were good enough at what they're doing that it held itself together, and it didn't take a lot of knowledge. It was really just coordinating and scheduling.
Yeah.
It's when you really start to elevate the technical side of stuff to where they really fell off. And I don't think they didn't have a need for it. You look at our high builder, big number builders, Shasta, California. That's not their wheelhouse. They don't want to be in that wheelhouse. They try, but they just never kind of molded the company to manage that kind of work,
Yeah.
and it just left a good opening for us.
So it's you said plumbing company, and that was something I wanted to talk to you about. So along your way, when you started building pools, how long in before you started the plumbing company, or how did that start?
It's funny. I think it's one of those things like we have now. We started building pools, and we started doing more technical pools, and we had latched on to a plumber that worked for a plumbing company that had more knowledge and more skill, but still didn't know enough. But it was helping us kind of figure it out, and then that kind of fell apart because he left and went to work for somebody else, and then now we didn't have a plumber to work with. And we were plumbing more pools, and we were really providing a whole bunch of technical assistance, which now my perspective is we should have that knowledge. At the time we didn't know that we should have it, but the plumber didn't have it either, and it was really just kind of created issues for us to try to explain to them why we want it done our way,
Hmm.
because nobody does it that way, and I've done it for 20 years. And so then this guy came back around one day and was looking for work, and I'm like, well, and I at the time I knew Buzz Giz a little bit too, and Paddock was looking for plumbers, and like, well, we could do this, which we were wrong. We sucked at it, obviously, but we brought him in, started up that plumbing company, had one guy, one truck. We're plumbing some of our projects, and we had couple other pool builders we had done some other side work for, and my partner Brett kind of leveraged his old relationships to see if we could pick up some plumbing work, and we built to three or four plumbers at that time, or four crews. And then we were being handed work by Paddock and handed work by a couple other companies, Blue Haven, and it was kind of a decent business. We were doing okay with it. But kind of like the rest of our business, we became the guys that did the real hard technical stuff, and all the easy meaty money. We weren't getting those jobs. We would get the really tough Paddock jobs, but they were still priced on their price sheet,
Yeah.
And we did it for quite a while. We were doing, we got to a point where we're doing 20, 30 pulls a week.
Shit.
It was kicking our ass though. I mean, honestly, it was taking a ton of my focus away. We were like you deal with on a daily basis to the dealing with the different turnovers and loss of materials, and it slowly but surely just imparted on us that we weren't geared towards it. It really distracted us from what we were trying to do. And so we slowly moved our way out of it. We still carry the license. We don't, I think I've plumbed one or two pools in the last 5 or 6 years out of duress because I couldn't get you where I needed you. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
So, and even called you to say, are you okay? I'm going to try to plumb this pool myself. But it's just not what we're great at, and it wasn't where we wanted to focus our business.
So my next question is, because you started the plumbing thing, I would assume that that's one of the important phases. What do you think? And you're sitting across from a plumber, and I'm
Yep.
not looking for you to say it's plumbing, but what do you think if you had to pick one phase that you absolutely had to control because it's the most important part? What do you think that is?
It's the one we still control today,
Shotcrete
design,
design. Really?
because it's all those little nuances that if you have them in the design correctly, then I feel like in the field you can rely less on everybody knowing what they're doing. The shotcrete and plumbing become number two together, because those are the two places where we have major failures. Electrical, it's pretty basic. We're not doing a lot, now we're low voltage. I mean, other than people knowing how to bond a pool, most of that's pretty simple. The automation, even the best automation between the big three, is archaic as it gets. It's just, ones and zeros turning things on.
You still using Revit?
Yeah, we everything we do design wise now is 3D Revit, BIM modeling. So it's not really geared towards the pool industry. We've geared it ourselves, but the where I see most pool failures, and especially when we get to these high end projects, if you look at, we talked about some pool builders that were trying to do stuff they really couldn't do. It wasn't their capacity to build them; it was their past capacity to understand how they should have been built. And if you get the design side right, and then you follow it, most of those problems go away. There certainly with shotcrete quality doesn't always work. Plumbers, not knowing how to manage big pipe and some of those things can give you problems. But if the hydraulics were designed correctly, now they have a plan to follow. You can pull off really, really tough stuff. And you see failures in surge tank sizing and overall plumbing sizing. And so, the Virginia Graham Baker Act is here because we had, nobody following plumbing rules, but they didn't know how to, right? So now we have all these other acts in place to try to protect swimmers because pool builders are dumbasses and didn't read the book. The design side can solve a lot of those problems because where we're doing expert witness work or seeing pool failures, it's usually shotcrete quality or concrete or overall structural detailing being wrong, or it's poorly designed hydraulics or surge tanks or plumbing. They don't have enough water, or they don't have enough surge, or they don't have enough flow, and you can't overcome it. If you don't have enough pipe size, you Doesn't matter what kind of horsepower you put behind it, you can't move it. If you don't have a big enough surge tank, you can't put more than 5 swimmers in a pool without problems. If you don't understand structural sections and those details and you try to build to your normal standards, you got a pool failure. So, and even as an industry, we still have a long way to go. You look at most pool sections that are structural sections, they can't be built to meet code, and they're stamped by a structural engineer.
What do you mean?
Well, so we look at there's a lot of these mail order type plans or standard plan sets show a 6-inch concrete wall with number 3 rebar. Well, ACI what's American Concrete Institute requires 3 inches of coverage of the steel to the earth and 3 inches of coverage to the water. Well, the wall's 6 inches thick, so I can't, even if I was perfect,
Unless the rebar's flat.
unless the rebar's flat, and it's got to be perfect, right? It can't be
No deviation.
half an inch out. It's got to be perfect. So how do we pull that off? We can't even pull it off if we tried. So you can't design to the most minimal of standards and meet some of those codes. Now, we also build thousands of those pools a year and they perform fine. So the minimums are probably excessive, but if we don't design in a way that you can construct it and make it work and meet codes, you'll get yourself in trouble when you have a failure. So, but we, as an industry, we continue to do that. I mean, how many pools have we seen for, even today, you'll watch guys put 3 horsepower pumps in and have 2-inch suction, 2.5-inch suction, and like, oh, we used a huge pipe, we're doing 2.5-inch suction.
Yeah.
You can't put a 3 horsepower pump behind that because it can't meet the velocity requirements. But it happens every day, still happens to this day. I still deal with pool builders and pool service guys that think variable speed's a joke. Okay,
Yeah.
we know it's not. We can prove it. It's been proven 1,000 times. They don't want to stick to it. The industry has gotten way better. Like I said, back we talking 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of education opportunities, and most of the builders out there, pools were more of an afterthought. They weren't so focal to the projects. They were simpler. They were more basic. The more educated or the better designers and architects and landscape designers really started to create some really cool ideas. And like anything else, everybody tries to replicate it, and they don't understand the nuances of the hydraulics or the requirements of the structure, and it fails. And so if you get the design side worked out and you understand all those, then it's a kit of parts and you just have to assemble it and match.
There's a lot of builders not a lot of builders we work for, but you see a lot of builders or hear of a lot of builders that they can draw it on the paper, but they do none of that back work. And
Yep.
that kind of leads me into another scenario or a question I wanted to pose to you, because it's something that drives me crazy in our business. Sometimes we get roped into working with guys who are great at putting it on paper, but they're not great at figuring out the back stuff.
Right.
And so we'll suggest to them, because we have other, we work for you or we're doing our own hydraulic stuff, so we understand the way that things should be. And then you recommend it to that contractor. You're like, this is how we need to do it. And then they override you, and you have to make that decision. Like, do I put my name on this or do I walk away?
Right.
And we all have families,
Oh,
what
yeah.
I mean? So sometimes you have to do it, especially if it's a big client. That shit drives me crazy. And I don't know if you've ever been in that position when you were subcontracting for somebody, but I'd be interested to hear your take on like that scenario, like what you do when they're asking you to do something that isn't
Well,
perfect.
it literally happened to me today because we are subcontractors often. We work for a lot of custom home builders too. We work for a lot of bigger general contractors. We started a job, you plumbed it. It's probably 4 years old now. The pool was in first because the house is sitting on the pool. Really cool project. I'll tell you the name later, but we put the pool in first. The house is framed on top of our structure. It's been in litigation now almost 2 years because of all kinds of a litany of other problems, but I'm meeting the new GC today to walk that project. And one of the problems is they framed the house to the pool. It should have been masonry and water. There's all these other details that should have been carried out. And we had recommended from day one that they hire a envelope consultant or some sort of, waterproofing consultant to come up with the details. The architect was supposed to do that. We started the pool and we left. We were gone almost 14 months before they called us back because we got to shotcrete and left it while they built the house, the foundation, and framed it. Well, they come back to finish it, and they literally have this house, which is it's a negative edge. It's not like a Lautner edge, but the framing literally, the house is in the pool is almost inset into the patios, and the patios are framed onto the pool. Well, there's lights and switches and outlets and framing, dimensional lumber framing sitting on the coping. And we're like, we can't build it this way. So that's almost 18 months ago when we came in and like, well, there's all kinds of other problems, but like, well, we got to change this and fix these things. I get called again a week ago because now they got a new GC and they've got all these solutions, and I go meet them and they've taken the plywood off and putting Wonderboard and just Red Guard for waterproofing, but they didn't change the framing out. And I'm like, did you guys hire a consultant? Well, no, he's kind of out of money. It's a $4 or $5 million house. I'm like, so I'm not finishing the pool the way it is now. He goes, well, it's on us. I'm like, no, it's not. When this goes sideways, I'm going to be stuck in it. I can guarantee it.
Guaranteed.
And I'm like, there's only one way to build this pool, and it's right. And you got to make these changes. And so I don't know where the job's going to go. But I feel your pain because we deal with that on occasion. And I don't know a way around it. I think the best thing I've found is we've learned to not tell people to do it. We've tried to learn how to educate them why we're doing stuff. And it takes a long path to do that. Some don't want the education, right? And especially when I was younger, luckily now I'm bald and old and I look like I might know something. When I was 25 or 30 and I'm out there with more knowledge than guys that are 40 or 50, I might not have the experience, but I had more knowledge than them, right? And trying to mold those together and say, listen, I took this class yesterday and we deal with that daily with shotcrete guys, right? They know what they're doing and they don't give a shit what you're telling them. And they've never had a problem. They've done it 30 years, but they don't realize there is a problem because they're gone.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, on the expert witness side now, and I go back and see projects that have been built and see where the failures occur. Now I understand why they're occurring. So now we're correcting those problems and then we can explain to them why. And I think that in the most part that they want to do it right, but they don't realize there's a need. And they certainly don't want to slow down production and speed. And like we got families too, and we're like, okay, we'll do it that way. And sometimes you have to within reason, but that's probably the worst part about the construction industry at large, and maybe it's all industries, but we have so many. Well, we're losing all of them too, but we have all these older guys that have so much experience. But because it's construction, there was not much education involved. It was, throw him out in the ditch, put a shovel behind him. Next week he's a framer. 2 weeks later he's hanging drywall. Now he's a home builder. What? It doesn't. You can't transition that quickly. And then they just watch and I've said count on the trades to know what they're doing, and that works to a point. When I first started working with you, and I still to this day rely on you or vice versa. Be like, so not sure how we should fix this. What are you thinking? Or I got something drawn up, and you're like, Rick, I don't think that's going to work. And I look, I'm like, shit, man, you're right.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Let me figure that out. I think if everybody could look, more within and take the criticism and be okay with that. And I know early on in my career, I was probably not that guy either, but I've definitely learned that there's much more information out there and different eyes looking at things, catch things. You just got to be willing to accept it. I don't know how to get the old guys or even the young guys that are arrogant, that just can't be explained to. I was dealing with a shotcrete failure on a job, and this shotcrete guy got out of control on me multiple times. I'm like, listen, we're here because your pool's failing. You get that, right? Like, I know you think I'm an asshole, but the reason we're here today is because whatever you keep saying works didn't work, right? Maybe this time, maybe it's the first time ever.
Yeah.
But I took pictures of I had pictures of construction from the client, and I could point where to core drill the pool because I could tell from the pictures during the shotcrete stages where they screwed things up poorly. And I was right. And when we took the cores, it was obvious it was a major screw up. And this guy, two different times, he really got off the rails. And then 24 hours later, he sat back down. Man, I'm sorry. You're right. Listen, I screw up all the time, man. We've had plenty of our own mistakes. We got to own them. We got to deal with them. But there's so much to learn today, tomorrow. I think you called me 2 days ago about a job that we were trying to do. It would have worked probably. It certainly wasn't the best way to do it by any means. And you had a much better plan and knew that you should say, hey, Rick, I don't want to question you, but
yeah,
we should do it this way. And you were 100% correct.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like some of the situations that I run into are like we have a standard, because our name is out there and people rely on us to do things right. And, like if we have a builder who's working with us and we'll get the phone call a lot like, hey, we're doing this big project. I need your help on this one. Tell us how you do it. And I say, okay, well, we're going to do 4-inch suction because we're going to build this at 4 feet per second on suction, 6 on return. And then that's when they go, So it's like a standards thing. Like it's not going to not work to build it at 6.8 or 8.10 or whatever it is. But it's like, it bothers me sometimes when people come to us and I can't do it. Like if you're asking JMax to put their name on it, I want to do it right, like 100%. And it bothers me that sometimes we have to flex on that to keep a relationship. I mean, I guess that's just work, but it
is, but I'm with you. I don't understand, especially when they call for your expertise.
Yeah.
We just lost a huge project that we designed. It's very expensive. The design was very complicated. It's a $700,000 swimming pool, but it's on a cliff. It's got massive backfill. It's perimeter overflow, so it's a negative edge plus a Lautner edge. And it's very complicated. And the home engineer and my engineer and me and the builder met on site and came up with a solution. We designed the solution. It's damn pricey.
Yeah.
The builder's like, the builder and the homeowners, there's no effing way we're paying that money. Like, okay, so you need to engineer this less. I'm like, listen, I'll build it this way. I don't know what you want to do. I'm not the engineer. I know enough about engineering to say I'm not going to re-engineer it myself. So now they've called one of these other engineers to try to come simplify it. And of course, they're calling my engineer to get options changed on his stuff. He's like, we got huge retaining walls that were designed as part of the pool structure. So the floor is helping restrain them. Well, they want to make the wall smaller, and it's not going to be restrained by the pool anymore. He's like, well, you certainly can't make it smaller if you don't do that. But why aren't you doing that? Well, because the floor is too thick and the cost is too big. Like, so you've got two really smart guys telling you the only way it should be done is this way. Maybe 3 or 4 guys telling you that, but your budget's going to tell you differently. And so what I've learned is walk away on big projects like that. Look, if you ever let anybody's budget increase your risk but decrease your income, that's your fault.
True.
Right? I mean, because that's normally what happens. And that's the one I walked today. So I can take this huge risk on because he doesn't have any money. Well, I guarantee when it goes sideways, he still won't have any money. And they're going to point fingers at me, even if I've just to prove that I was right. It's not worth, don't increase your risk by saving your client money. It doesn't make any sense. I'll increase my risk if I can make more money, right? There's a trade-off somewhere. And when you talk about where I'm going to flex a little because I'm making more money down the road, you got to pay, you can find the payoff for it. But there's some things you're like, this is the way it has to be done, or we can't do your job.
Well, it's like you said too. They're always like, "Oh, just do it this way, and it'll be on me." But it's never on them, because then it's like a third person comes in, like an expert witness. We've had that situation too. Luckily, on the 2 jobs that I've had an expert witness go back. Well, actually, there was one that you did an expert witness on too, not including that one. 2 other ones, and the plumbing ended up being okay. But it's like, yeah, we'll take the rap for it, and they never do. And then you're sitting there holding the bag for it, and then you feel real stupid.
Well, and it really depends on your client level. And I teach enough in the industry now too. And when we talk, people ask me these questions all the time. I said, listen, if you can outspend the client, you can take higher risk.
Right.
You and I have worked for some clients that I don't care how much time in the industry or how many lotteries I win, I can't outspend the client. So it doesn't matter if I'm right. I'm going to lose. It's going to cost me a ton of money. I might prove that I'm right, but they can run this so far down the road, you're going to end up fixing it anyway.
Right.
And so when you start working at that client level, you don't take those risks. There is one way or there's no way, and so
that makes sense.
And again, usually you're cutting these corners to save the client money, but you've increased your risk dramatically. Tell me the logic. If I was to walk you through that like I just did, would you like, yeah, I should save Mr. Smith money, but increase my risk dramatically because I'm gonna not benefit in any way at all. I don't get to swim here. I don't get to show off the backyard as my backyard. So I've saved him a bunch of money and I've increased my risk dramatically. And you've seen it. I've seen it. Those things get forgotten pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you remember? I don't remember that conversation. Like, remember when you said it's on me? So even in writing, like you can't get yourself wavered out of responsibility, and you're always considered the expert, no matter what. When the homeowner says, well, you say I told the homeowner you shouldn't do it this way, but I did it anyway. Okay, but you're the expert, right? So you did it. Well, I told him, yeah, but he's not the expert. He doesn't know enough. You have to there's some things you got to stand your ground. I think the good thing I see is the industry's come a long way. Like it really has. I mean, there's a podcast we're talking about right now, right? That people are getting more educated listening to us talk. We've got a podcast where we do the same thing to try to help and educate pool builders. There's a literal industry of it now. And now there's 2 people involved. So now there's even some competition on that of how to teach pool builders to build things right. They each have their own philosophies, but the end result is we're increasing the education and the quality of the builds we do. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
who's that? Who are the 2?
Well, you got Genesis and you got Watershape University, right? So at least those 2 now, they're teaching and they have similar ideals within reason, but they're literally providing opportunities to the industry to get better. And I think when I started this, I was begging for that, and there was little to nothing. Genesis was like right at its inception. And so there was a little bit out there, and at the beginning of them starting, I got involved and then just took off full force with it because it was so much good information. And all those guys were doing was combining smart guys and finding solutions to problems and bringing engineers into the game to say, hey, can we figure this out? And spent some time working on it. Whereas we were out there digging a pool. We're like, I don't know, how big's the basin need to be? Shit, well, it's 30 feet long, so maybe 2 by 2. What, there was, it's it's the simplest equation known to man. But at the time you couldn't find it. Google wasn't really around. Even if there was no books on pool building, there was no, but it was simple math. But we didn't teach anybody. Now at least there's enough of us doing it. I think that that's creating enough competition that the others have to start doing it.
Yeah.
I want to go back for a second. Can you give an example of, say, a plumbing job or just make one up? Like, what is the cost difference between doing it, say, the cheap way and the way you're supposed to do it? It's like plumbing the way it's supposed to be and undersized. Like,
Well,
what is the difference?
usually it's pretty. Well, it used to be quite a bit less. Today, to go from 2.5 to 4 or something is dramatic, right?
Like,
But
what's dramatic?
well, I mean, let's what's 2.5 inch pipe going in is how much per foot currently?
It's two something. It's basically two something a foot versus $6 a foot or four something a foot or whatever. I couldn't even tell you right now, but I can tell you it's not hundreds, it's thousands. But you look at a pool that's worth 100 grand, like what's 2 grand to do it right or wrong? I
Well,
mean,
and
that's what it ends up being. Because I know on those projects where they have come to us to value engineer it or
Yep.
whatever you want to call it, the nice way of saying do it wrong, do it not to the highest standard. It's never
It's
so much money
thousands.
that I'm like,
And the real problem is, what does it cost to fix it if it doesn't work, right? So
yeah,
you end up like, I mean, you've probably been involved in these. Someone has a spa, the jets don't have enough power. Well,
all
the
the
first
time.
thing they do is put a bigger pump on. So we were breaking the code and life safety stuff dramatically already. Yeah, let's put another pump on that thing and see if we can go even faster.
Yeah.
But the reality is, hydraulics, you can't overcome them, right? The friction based, the velocity increases friction. Once you get to a certain point, it's terminal velocity. You can't. It wouldn't matter. You could put a Corvette engine on this thing; it won't move more water. It's just going to collapse pipes. And so there's no easy solution to some of those. And the same thing happens structurally, right? So if you build a negative edge wall the easy way, okay, well maybe we save 5 grand. The corrective measures, if it goes wrong though and didn't work because you're like right on the edge of reality, it could cost you 50 grand to fix it. So that's the cost, right? It's you can skip by and you can do, if you do a lot of numbers, you can forget about those $50,000 repairs. But the cost of doing it wrong is not just the cost you might have saved. It's really the cost that could impact if it doesn't work.
You think people just sometimes want it to be good enough because they're like, if this will last at least, a few years or 5 years or whatever it may be, they're going to be moved out. I'm going to be, not here anymore. They probably forget even who I am. Do you think there's a lot of people out there like that?
I think 70% of our industry is exactly right, because one is most people are very transient in their homes. So the warranty doesn't transfer very much anyway. You get the shotcrete guy that says he's never had a problem. Fuck, he's had hundreds of problems probably.
Never heard about him.
But he never heard about him because the pool builder either managed it or paid the client off or whatever it might be. Or it was 2 or 3 years later and you bought the house and you weren't the original homeowner, so you don't have a warranty to go back on. So it's really sad to me. I think, like I said, it's these guys that they're saving a little bit of money for their client, but it's not enough to make it worth it. But they add their risk to their side, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's when we talk to people, teach them to do soils reports on more complicated job sites, like you got to have a site geotech report done. Well, I don't want to pay for that. Why are you paying for it? You're going to charge the client because it needs to be done. And I guarantee you, $100,000 pool. Let's keep it simple. Let's say it's $100,000 yard. If I sit down with Justin and explain to him why we're going to do the soils report and what information we can garner from that to make sure we build his pool correctly, and it's going to cost him $2,600. After you told him he doesn't need one, I already have the job, bro. And I can charge the $2,600 plus I can mark it up, plus I decrease my risk. It's that simple. If you educate the homeowner on why we should do these things, they're like, well, that's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't I do that? Well, because Joe's trying to save you $50, man. But is it worth 3 grand? What we might find out too is that we can decrease the structural design a little bit because we have really good soil. That could happen too. But to save the money, the pool builder thinks he's saving money. First of all, it shouldn't have been his money in the first place. And he dramatically increased his risk again to make less money. It just doesn't pencil. And so
That's the crazy one that I never understood, builders that wouldn't want to do a soils test because there's so many things underground that can go wrong. I was just telling you recently watching like a docu series on sinkholes, and I was like, dude, that'd be fucking crazy if you were building a pool and say you built it, at whatever depth, and there was like a sinkhole maybe a foot below that, where you were just able to get the pool in, and over time
Moves.
you have a situation like what happened in somewhere in one of the eastern countries where they're partying and the sinkhole like
Opens
killed
up.
them,
Oh, yeah.
swallowed them.
Well,
Yeah.
we work in Texas quite a bit. We work around Arizona a lot, and there's parts of Arizona that have some of the best soils in the world that are super easy to compact, and they hold up really well. They don't compress over time even, so we can get good compaction in retaining areas. But the thing that the industry always forgets is when we build a house, we're gonna design that house with some built-in movement. We're gonna be okay with this differential settlement of a house, maybe half an inch, 3/4 of an inch, maybe even an inch if it's big enough, right? But that same builder then goes out and builds a perimeter overflow pool. Well, now our tolerance for movement is zero, not a 1/4 inch, not a half inch, not 3/4, zero, right? So if we have any settlement whatsoever and we have a perimeter overflow pool, it's obvious within minutes. And what the solution isn't easy. If it's a tiny bit of movement, it's pretty easy, right? If we, again, design correctly and pick a material that's thick enough on the weir that we can adjust it by grinding it and polishing it, we can make up a little bit of settlement. But if it's that might give us maybe 3/16 at the high end. If we have a half inch of settlement on a perimeter overflow swimming pool, the fix is tens of thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I've seen more of those pools than the way they're supposed to be built.
That's the kind of stuff I usually get called in on is why did this happen, and how do we fix it? Well, shit, if it's not moving anymore, the fix is actually easy. It's just pricey, right? We can just rip all the interior off or pull the weir tiles off and reset everything up and make it work. If we can't make sure it's not moving anymore, now we got to underpin it or structurally support it somehow. Well, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars for sure. Especially even if it was $100,000 pool, it might cost more to fix than it was to build the pool. And all that happened because someone saved a couple $1,000, right?
So this is all kind of going back to what you think is, the most important part of the process in the design. Because if you were that invested in, I've heard you say, I don't know if I remember this right, but you've spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars in training for designing, like in Revit and different
Oh,
things
for
like
sure.
that. And you're probably so invested in it because it's saving you like $1 million lawsuit down the road, or there's so many things that can happen when you don't build something
Well,
correctly.
I would tell you if we were doing the construction projects we're doing and we weren't educated about them and we were taking the typical road to build those, I'd be out of business already. Um, One, I maybe wouldn't even risk it because I'm too risk adverse. But more importantly, we would have had too many failures. I mean, we're working on a project with Justin right now. It's over $10 million. If that goes sideways, you think I can afford to fight the guy that can pay me the $10 million for a backyard play pool? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's happening, right? And if you get with guys like David Penton working in LA on the side of cliffs, and you got, you know, Ben down in Texas working on the side of mountains in Austin, like you can't screw those up because you can't afford to deal with it. So you got to build it right. And the funny thing is, those clients a lot of times, I never have the client problem. So I literally just walked away from a really good project that we would have done, and it was actually a corrective project, but we couldn't have any connection to the client. Okay, so the client's big enough to where they have people. The people always create the problem, not because they're bad people. It's because they think they're protecting the owner at all times. The owner has no empathy for me as the contractor. The people, the managers in the middle, the owner's reps, don't even relay the information back and forth correctly. And we were going to get invested into it's a $100 million project that's got about a $10 million problem, and we were going to fix that for him. But every step of the game was denying us any access to have a relationship with a client, so we understand their real. Because what happens is the owner's rep thinks they're protecting the client, so they make it impossible to do the work, right? And they don't communicate and go back and forth. So to make the project better, smarter, easier, whatever, that never happens. They make it twice as hard, and then there's no relationship with the ownership. So when things aren't going perfect, which they certainly will not, because it's a very complicated solution, the reality is when things start going sideways or we have problems, I know already from the communication we've had, the client won't get the actual information, and I'm just going to get hammered down harder by the owner's rep to fix the problem. And it's a communication breakdown that gets us, and so that's the same thing I think happens on a lot of high-end jobs where there's an owner's rep involved leveraging the shit out of you to have your price right and the numbers right. When if I could talk to the client and explain to them why they need a soils report, guess what? All in.
Yeah.
I haven't heard good things about, you know, general contractors or builders with the owner's reps?
We've had good success with both, but we have definitely learned. I don't mind working with an owner's rep at all, but I want to make sure I have a relationship with the client. Empathy is huge, man. Me and Justin work really well together because we know each other really well, and we got empathy for each other. I know what he's got to go through. He knows what I go through. We've got employees. He's got employees. I could have an employee screwing something up. He's going to call me and say, "Bro, we need to talk about this." He's not going to be pissed off at me. He's not going to burn me down. He's going to be like, "You're having this problem. I just want you to know what's going on. I think you need to look at this." Because we have empathy for each other. If he doesn't have any empathy for me, he don't give a shit. He just moves on, or he just does what the guy said. Well, yeah, fuck him. If that's what Rick's guy says to do, we'll just do it. But the difference is when you can create the relationship with the client and or the general contractor, whoever it is, and you have empathy for each other. Now we're both working in the same direction, and that project we just talked about, it wasn't going to be a team. It was going to be an owner's rep driving me into the ground to try to prove something to the client, which was unrealistic. And the client never really understood the complexity of what we had to do and how much of a problem it was going to be. And the multiple times I had to push back really hard to where I was aggravating the owner's rep, I was right, and the answer did finally come back to me, but I had to like force him to ask the question. And I knew, I'm like, you know what? And I went with my partners too. I'm like, it's a big job. It's like 10 million bucks. And it would last for the next 18, 24 months. I'm like, this is important. We don't know what the market's going to do. This is a good, but I could read it and just know. Everything we do is relationship driven, subcontractor, general contractor, homeowner driven, and the education side. And when you can create those relationships, I think you'll start some of the trades and some of your subs or GCs, the relationship will get them to start listening to each other and maybe taking your word for it and recognizing it. But it's often the separation of those jobs. And when the bigger the project you get to, they slowly try to dissect from that. And part of it's because they don't want to have to be assholes, but they know they can pay Justin to be an asshole and he'll just hammer this guy. And I won't have to feel bad about it. I can go have dinner with my wife tonight and enjoy myself. Why my team's beating him up.
I need an owner's rep.
Yep.
Just in my regular life.
There you go. Don't we all? I don't know how we got derailed into that path of talk, but
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is with the types of projects you're doing, it's like a domino effect opposed to like something that's really simple, like a basic residential pool, one filter, one pump, a heater, you know, something like, one of the pools that we're going to talk about, one thing happens, or even that pool you built on the rooftop in PV.
Yep.
It's like, it's not just, an issue, say something falls through into the garage or something. It's like, I wish it were that easy, but you also totaled my Ferrari and a Jaguar and all of these other things happened. Like one thing affects another thing.
Yeah, because once you get really technical into the higher end jobs, we start calling them architecturally integrated too. They're literally parts of the structure, right? The job I won't finish now until they correct it is because the structure's sitting on our pool. I'm not responsible for the structure, but I know enough that it's going to cause problems. And I also know that the phone call is going to come my way, right? So we have a job in Hawaii. I got a phone call today. We built it. We designed it 9 years ago, consulted the construction. Nothing's wrong. It's a simple issue, but they call me because I'm on the paperwork. Hey, it's acrylic panel. They want to get some maintenance done on it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. But
Do you get excited when you get that call? Yep, I could be on the next flight out. Just,
I go to Kona enough that it's not fun for me to go to Kona, but because we got a couple of projects out there. But it's more you get anxiety. You're like, oh shit, what's going wrong, right? Because high end client, they're calling me. It's 5 or 7 years old. Doesn't matter. They'll find a way to make it my fault. It was nothing. But like my point is, you're there, and now it's integrated to the whole project. And when we do rooftop pools or houses that sit on pools or pools that are right on top of each other or multiple layers or on the side of a cliff, there's so many other things that get integrated into it. And if you don't understand all the aspects of it, you get yourself in trouble. And it's that simple. And we keep talking about me, but I have a team that has, I've got a civil engineer on my staff. I got an architect on my staff. I got multiple drafters on my staff. I've got all kinds of guys that have experience as carpenters and craftsmen and welders. Those are the guys that protect us at all times. You know what I mean? We've created a culture, I believe, at least. Maybe I'm naive to it, but we've created a culture that they're all looking to protect each other and us together. And so what Justin's part of my culture. He's protecting me from a job a week ago about a autofill that we didn't design correctly. You got to create that culture and that opportunity for people to speak up and let you know there's a problem or give you their input, because that makes you better and it protects you from your problems. That same project I'm going to go correct is a project that we did design work on, didn't build the job, and the job's going south dramatically, right? And now they want me to come help. During the construction, during the design process, when we didn't get the job, I sat down with the owner's rep and the GC and said, listen, I get that I'm not getting the work. I'm not even butthurt. I mean, I'm a little bit butthurt, but that's not why I'm sitting down with you. The reality is we're the designer of record. This is a very complicated pool. The company you're hiring, this is over their head. Don't blow me off. If they need help or you need help, call me. We'll help you through it. Like this is like, there's no, regardless of whether you wanted to hire me or not, if you don't want to hire me, I certainly don't want to be on your job site because that would suck anyway. But don't just disconnect me from the project and build the project without me because you're going to have problems. Guess what? They have problems.
Is that local?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You've been there.
Perfect.
So, and what's funny is, thank God, the first call I get to go look at this project, I'm like, well, let me see what plans you guys built from. This is a big plan set. They spent a lot of money on.
Did
Guess
we
what?
plumb it?
I think you did. The good thing is they didn't use my plans.
What
The
idiots?
plans that they
Paid for? So the client paid me to draw the plans. The GC didn't hire me, so he let the pool builder that he did hire make his own set of plans. They basically replicated mine pretty dramatically. But honestly, usually I'd be like, oh, let's go after these guys. Like, perfect, you saved me. Because
Who's the
now
builder?
you used your own set of plans and didn't use mine. But what's dumb is the reason I started on this rant was it was his arrogance that didn't let me help him. Instead of him being like, hey, I'm not going to have you build this pool because I've got my guy, and then call me when he needed help, we wouldn't be here today. Instead, it's going to turn into probably a big lawsuit, a bunch of money, and it's going to cost him a fortune, or at least a lot to fight it, and a lot of anxiety and everything else, even if he wins. And most of that was based on him being too arrogant to say, look, Justin knows a little bit more about this plumbing than I do. Give me some input. And he should have done that, right? Instead, he's got himself in a bad spot.
Okay, so we're talking about all these big pools that have problems and stuff. So it brings up the question: what are the 5 biggest pools, or best, baddest, coolest pools that you built?
I don't know if I can come up with 5 exactly, but
Yeah,
you know I mean, so the rooftop pool, a lot of people have seen. It's probably one of my favorites because it gets a lot of acclaim. It's got it's pretty basic when you really think about it.
Isn't it super shallow? Like,
yeah, it's right now it's 3 foot of depth.
okay.
When we got called in, it was 1 foot deep.
That's right.
The design was about 1 foot, so it showed a pool on a rooftop and like by others. So we had to do all kinds of corrective measures and design details to make it work. But I think because we pulled off a technical feat with that one, it made it really cool. The acrylics, acrylic has its place, and there's 1,000 pools it doesn't belong in. That one to me, like, it's perfect the way it's set up. The acrylic worked perfectly. It kind of carried the architecture of a glass handrail that was on the other balconies. It all came together. I think CP Druitt had designed the project initially, so it was really his vision. We just kind of made it work.
Who's that?
He's an architect here.
CP
Druitt. Yeah.
Oh,
You know CP Druitt, don't you?
Druitt?
Druitt works.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I just don't know him by that acronym. Or
yeah.
whatever.
So the overall concept and thought process was theirs. Structurally and artistically, it wouldn't have worked by the way it was drawn. But they brought us in. We worked together with them, and we were able to create his vision for him and make it work.
So what was cool about that one is it was over a garage, right?
Yep.
And it was basically just a rectangle pool on the roof of the garage, and it had acrylic glass looking out over, right?
Correct.
How do you access it? Did they walk up the top?
There's a set of stairs to one side of it, and also the master bedroom is the whole second floor, and so they can walk over there. That's really the master bedroom pool.
Got it.
So it's a Lautner edge on the house side. It's acrylic on the far side. It's got a spa that we came up with a real trick detail to have them both at the same level, but have them share water. We just pulled off some cool technical feats with that, and it shows bitching. So surge tanks for that one. So it moved 3 times during construction. Originally, it was upstairs on the roof deck, and then it went downstairs in 1 room, and then it went 2 rooms over. So that's one of the projects we first started using Revit as well.
Yeah. There you go.
So when we started using that project in Revit, that helped us solve all these problems because they kept moving equipment on us, and we had to model in all these hydraulics, and really hydraulics aren't too hard to deal in architecture unless they're gravity, right? When we start dealing with gravity lines, especially on like that one's got a Lautner edge on the house side. Well, the gravity line has to go where the gravity line has to go. We can't make it go uphill. We can't go around too many corners. And so it was helpful for us we modeled all the structural and everything else. And I think even at the time, the architect wasn't using even modeling in Revit yet. So we fixed all those details and came up with all the problems and issues and created those solutions for them. So, and then we've done a couple profiles on that one, and we've taught it in some classes. So
That's awesome.
That tile is awesome too.
Yeah, all glass tile interior. I mean, it's just got some really cool stuff. Even though it's a rectangle, it's just all the little details that worked out really well. Um,
Super impressive. It's like a good trophy project. I mean, you got the Arizona views, and it's just that is a total luxury project.
yeah, it's and it's the right way to use acrylic. It gets you a huge benefit because of the acrylic. Sometimes acrylic goes in and it really doesn't function the way the client expects it to. It worked out really well for us. And
How did all those lights look? Like, say you're coming up to the acrylic at night, or, and the lights are
you're
coming.
so far below it, you see them like you see them in the images, but they're not very obtrusive like that. They
I
don't
mean, but
bother you.
does it look cool?
Oh
Like, does
yeah.
it kind of
Oh,
like
for
light
sure.
up a what?
Well, it lights
Like,
it
you
up,
know, there's a pool up there.
well, the cool thing is, I think if you had the lights off, you'd almost not recognize how cool the pool is and recognize that it was a pool.
Yeah.
You pop those lights on, and then it lights up the acrylic, and you can like, holy shit, there's water sitting up
I
there.
bet the acrylic glows pretty gnarly too.
Yeah,
You gotta be gentle getting in there, dude. You pull in one of
What's
those
the
fancy cars out, and you splash out. All
What's the
over.
freeboard on the front, on the top of the glass to the water?
So it's about 2 inches on the front, but if you look at that image, you can see we also created an actual drain up there. So
in between the
yeah,
glass
so you'll
and the
see like a
edge?
little linear drain. So we
Yeah.
caught that water too, so it doesn't run down on people below you. So if someone's swimming or someone's walking around, we actually capture that water and put it into a drainage system.
None of my friends could. If that was my pool, none of my friends could come over because they drink too much. The splash out would be intense.
Intense.
Oh.
That'd
Well,
be
in
a
in reality,
waterfall.
that's really the master pool. I mean, you can get there in that stairwell, but it's not. That property's got a whole nother swimming pool with
Yeah.
big old slides
Of
and
course it
all
does.
kinds of shit. So that's the party pool. This is the master retreat pool. So it's got a spa and pool, and it's just shallow swimming. They can swim year round.
Okay, so we're calling this one the acrylic front over garage. What do you got out? What else you got?
So I think the next pool that, although it seems very simple and it's actually a pretty small pool, it's the first time that I worked for a client that wanted the best of the best. Okay. And taught me not to be a pussy.
Nice.
Right. And taught me not to be afraid to sell something. And so it was a CEO of Target. We'd done some other work for him on a museum he was building. And this was kind of like the gift to all the people that worked on his museum to build him a house. And the house is, we didn't do the house. The house is off the charts. But we did a really cool pool that's got a all glass spa, and we've got floating coping around that spa. And the pool interior was actually purple. And we used light streams glass on it. But the where I learned how to communicate with that kind of person, right? So this is one of our first high end clients that had more money than God, as far as I was concerned. We had talked him into this color scheme, and we had come up with using, because the tile was like purple and tan light streams that had this super cool iridescent reflection. We wanted the pool water to have some of that same color. So we had worked together back at the time. I was actually working with Tisherman, and we came up with a color scheme. Well, the interior of the pool is purple. So it's a special purple pebble tech. We used, I don't remember which pebble version we used, but we grabbed some pebbles from one of their pebbles, and then we created a purple base.
It's that one, right?
Yep, it's this guy right here. So we had, we sold them on the purple. They just bought into whatever I sold them because they're just great client, real easy to deal with. Remember that
Believed in you.
actual connection with them. I tell them that we want to do purple. I talk them through it. I get Pebble Tech makes me a digital sample what we think it'll look like, especially at depth. And they're like, yeah, sounds great. We're all in. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I go back and try to work through the process. Well, I don't know if you know, but purple pigment is probably the most expensive possible pigment you could ever imagine.
Really?
Okay. So purples and blues, the royal colors, right? Back in centuries and centuries and centuries ago, the rich people had purple and blue, okay? Because it's super hard to come up with. You don't see naturally occurring elements that are blue or purple. Very, very few, right?
Amethyst.
Right. But think of blue. Give me blue, like deep blue. Very little, right? So if you had blue gems or blue anything, you were rich. So purple's the emesis side. So we go get the quote, and you don't use dyes when you're dealing with pebbles and cements. You want pigments because they're color through and they last forever. They don't like leach out. So we get, and again, today's money in my head, this is like nothing, but we go to get the pigment, and it's going to cost about $25,000 just for the pigment, not for the install, not for the rest of everything else. I'm like, oh shit, man. I gotta go back to the client who I just like talked him up to get this idea, and he's gonna lose his mind. It's 25 grand. Who the fuck's gonna pay that for a pool? The whole pebble install at the time was probably $4,500.
Because it was your idea to do purple as well.
Oh, for sure.
right?
Yeah, it was my idea. Now I'm like,
Oh yeah, I bet you do like the purple.
yeah, exactly. Right. So my partner's with me, Brett. I'm like, man, this ain't gonna go well, but I guess we'll just gonna have to go meet with them. They happen to be in town. Sit down with a guy, and I'm like, so I know we had this purple idea. I know we really liked it. It's probably going to get derailed. That's just going to cost like 25 grand. Because originally in this conversation too, if the purple was going to look like, she's like, well, what's the worst case? We just got to redo it. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's the worst case. We chip it out and do something different. He's like, all right, fuck, let's go for it. He's basically gifting me like, hey, yeah, go for it, designer, try it. So then it's 25 grand. I'm like, this guy's going to lose his mind. And he's still like, what's 25 grand? I'm like, yeah. He says, does anybody else have this? I'm like, no. Is anybody else ever going to have this? I'm like, fuck, not for 25 grand. They're not. No. He's like, then let's go. I'm like, okay. And that was, we were just in the infancy of that project. And I think when I look at the overall project, I look back years later, and I know when we met with, it was a big commercial GC that built the house, and they asked for like preliminary budgets, and we had, the concept had been started by the architect, and then we took it over and finished the design work on the whole project and brought in another, we actually didn't even think we knew enough. So we brought a curator from one of our music, or one of our, Desert Botanical Gardens. We brought in one of the ex-curators from that and brought in a landscape architect to help design it, because the place is off the chains when it comes to that stuff. There's like 350 species of plants on the
I love
property.
that place.
Where's this place at?
That one's in Paradise Valley.
Okay.
Literally, they have, just like when you watch the botanical gardens, we got signs at all these different oddball plants and trees.
Awesome.
So early on, I think I put budgets together for the pool and landscape, and it was maybe $150,000-$200,000. By the time we leave the job, now we touch everything outside, so that we don't build the house, but we do the driveways, the walkways, and everything. We're at like $1.8 million. I mean, you would never know that kind of money was spent, but you know when you're there that it is just the best of the best. Every detail in the house is custom built. We designed and built the mailbox. The architect gave us a concept, but we designed and then constructed it. It's got air conditioning feeding into it. It's got license plate cameras built into it. All copper clad. It was like $100,000. It was like 5 sheets of drawings for the mailbox.
Why did he want cameras?
Just security. These guys, high-end security. Anybody passing by, he can recognize and record their license plate. So if something happened, he'd have record of it. But that's all built into this mailbox at the time. But like, we learned in working with him that everything he wanted to do was at the highest levels, right? So his decks are 2-inch thick limestone on top of 6-inch concrete, not 3/8 limestone, not 1/2-inch limestone, 2 inches of limestone on top of a 6-inch reinforced slab on top of 6 inches of ABC. Like, he wanted this house to be the pinnacle of the best built house. It's not huge. It's a basic lot. It's nothing like you'd expect. It's just very simply located, but it's just everything was thought through. He's got a little billiard room, and we sit down, there's two captain's chairs built into the wall, and each one of them's got this little brass handle that you can set your cue into, and it clicks in just perfectly but doesn't hurt the cue. I mean, every inch of that house is that way.
That's cool.
To the nines. And so that was one of my funnest builds, and taught me, I guess, how to communicate with that level of client. One, without fear, you always hear like, well, act as if, right? Like, yeah, hell yeah, 25, it's only be 25 grand. You're cool with that.
You probably spent more than that on your wine bottle that you just drank.
Here's the funny thing. What car he drives?
Toyota Camry.
Toyota minivan.
Toyota minivan?
Oh yeah.
I like his style.
He gets his new Toyota. This is the funniest story. I show up to do some meeting with him. He rolls up in a Toyota minivan, and I'm like, that's weird, right? He's an older guy, but you're still like, his car must be broken. Somebody goes, Rick, get your ass over here. I just bought this thing. This thing's fucking badass. I'm like,
quick as hell.
Oh, well, he's just like, look at all this shit. Because it is. I mean, if you think about it, utilitarian wise, that thing was sick. It had all these moving parts, and watch this. Push the remote, the doors open. This is 15 years ago, He's like, this is the awesomest car ever. I'll never own anything else. That's awesome. I'm like, this guy's worth shit tons of money. Drives a Toyota minivan. Nice. Now his wife's driving the Rolls Royce or, Bugatti or something. But you're just like, this is a guy that has so much money, he don't need to show it anymore. He don't care. Yeah. He's just the coolest cat. Yeah. Drives up in a Toyota minivan, wants all the luxury of the van, wants the easy entrance, easy exit, can push a button, the doors slide out. He's like, this is sick.
That's awesome.
It is. Can't catch me driving it. I'm still way too what do you call it?
Self-conscious.
I gotta have a big truck, and I
can't be jumping out of no minivan.
But you'll know when I've made it, it's because I show up in a minivan, bro. Right, when I'm in the minivan, you're like, damn, that boy must be rolling now.
I hope that happens.
I don't care how far. Awesome. I don't care how far I get. I will never own a minivan.
Never.
I'll walk.
I don't think so either. But if I see you in one, I'll know.
You'll know.
Man, that boy Justin, he must have doled it. I don't think I can either. But yeah, it was impressive to me.
If it's a minivan, it's gonna be black lifted.
Lamborghini. If Lamborghini starts making minivans, maybe
you're in it.
Did you ever have discussions with that guy that, did he say anything to you specifically that gave you more confidence?
I think just the fact that he was willing to trust us. You know what I mean? I guess, a lot of my life's been that way. I've been like when I came out of college and got hired as a GC for this company, I'm like, even now I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, I'm like, wet behind the ears. I've had my own company for like 3 seconds, but I'm like framing houses for low income housing. I'm like, these guys are gonna let me like build big shit for them. They're a big manufacturing company. I'm gonna travel around and build shit. Like, guys, are you simple, stupid? Like, what? You can't give me these responsibilities. I mean, all those experiences, and maybe I exuded enough knowledge, or I've always been pretty confident. When I was younger, it was arrogance. Now it's confidence. But he was one of those guys that just what like was looking to see so many people succeed. You get a lot of people that have a lot of money or that are at some level, and but you can tell they don't want anybody else to get to their level. I think he was the first guy that was, it still is beyond my level will ever be, but he never made me feel like it. I've literally sat on his patio and drank a whiskey with him. He showed me his minivan. He like those clients don't exist very often. They often are so much they either you think they're so much better you're afraid to be a part of their life, or they act as if. And so he was one of those first clients that was just as easygoing as could be, treated everybody the same respect, threw a party when we're all done. We got all these contractors and boots walking through his multi-million-dollar house, excuse me. Um, but just always trusted me. And I think it just built a lot more confidence. And, I had a cool ideas and concepts I never tried to push before. And we got a massive stainless structure that floats these 3 foot 6 by 3 foot 6 by 4 inch thick limestone slabs that literally levitate around his spa. Even that, again, the concept's cool. And then we get into the pricing of it, like $35,000 later in stainless, and then we get it built and we go to take it to powder coat. It's 14 feet wide. It's 16 feet in the other direction. How do I move this thing?
Yep.
Who's got a powder coat booth big enough to powder coat it? You're like, God damn, I got to figure this out. We got to get wide load permits. But he was that guy that was like, that's a bitchin' idea. Let's do it. And he let me be not afraid to like come up with ideas and you get people always tell you don't give the client what they ask for, give them what they need. I don't necessarily believe in forcing your ideas on them, but I think it gave me some confidence that maybe our ideas didn't suck, and maybe it's worth trying to say, hey, how about this idea, or you want to try this? And it made us know we could work with that level of client and know that they still put their pants on one leg at a time, and he doesn't need an owner's rep to protect him. And that's, I think that clients, when they get to a certain level, the people that are there that think they're doing the protection side, but I think they really probably screw up their life for them. They provide too much security, or they separate them from reality. And I don't know that they've ever asked for that. I think it just kind of gets forced on them. We're obviously working on a project together now in Paradise Valley that's easily the biggest project we've ever done. Both at least on the pool side, revenue wise, we've done bigger revenue projects, but the pool side's massive. I don't want to get into numbers on it because it's a pretty well known project, but it's got a shark tank, even the shark tank, and then it's got a pool down below in the basement. We also have a huge, massive pool above that we need a surge tank for. Well, if the water flows to the basement and I need a surge tank, where's the surge tank got to be? Well, it's another 17 feet below the 18-foot hole that the basement's in. So it's one of those projects that shows that our expertise and our knowledge and experience in working at all different levels of construction, commercial and residential and size wise, had to come into the table to figure out how to do it. And it's got Flowrider. It's the shark tank's 30,000 gallons. It's between the house and the pool with acrylic you can see through. It's got a go-kart track now. We've done a couple of those now, so those are just normal old stuff. But this go-kart track's kick-ass because it goes under the river, and we can see acrylic panels in the ceiling of the river, or the floor of the river, ceiling of the track. So I mean, you still get to do some cool stuff, but it's definitely, when it comes to the outside, it adds every complexity that you could add, and every type of feature you can throw between tube slides and Flowrider, which is a legitimate full-size commercial surf surf machine. The lazy river is not even that lazy. We got 10 pumps on the lazy river. The surf machine is designed to actually feed the river when we're running that. So it's just got a lot of really cool aspects to it, and that challenges everything.
So it's got shark tank, lower pool, huge upper pool, lazy river, surf machine. There's an indoor swim spa.
Yep.
There's a go-kart track that goes under. Isn't there glass in the floor?
Yep. So the go-kart track goes underneath the river because the property didn't really have enough room for a big lazy river and a big go-kart track. We started with 2 small ones.
Right.
But when they start to intersect, you're going to run out of room. So we, back to maybe we should try something. What if we put this under the river and come back out so we can overlap them, have them much bigger? And he's like, yeah, let's do that.
Love it.
So now we have this massive track that goes under the pool and comes back out. So now we have a tunnel, that and the house on its own has got a million things going on that we're not even involved in. But there's a
Yeah.
koi fish pond at the entryway that goes underneath the bridge between the master and the gym. Um,
And what's the river linear foot? Do you remember?
I think it's about 600 feet. Maybe not. It can't be that much. It's got to be 300 something, 400 feet.
Because we've done a handful or more lazy rivers, and normally we'll get like 2 pump stations,
Yep.
and this thing's got 10 pump stations.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so this is like this is like a commercial sized lazy river
Yep.
slammed into this residential backyard.
Is all the equipment in
Oh,
one
it's all
place
over
or
the
it's all
place.
No,
over
it's
the
all
place?
over the place. So
Yeah.
there's underground vaults everywhere. The Flowrider itself is 125 horsepower, right? So that's got a big submersed motor, but that whole control system is in a vault next to it. The other thing we have, so the Flowrider on this one is that they've done a couple of them now, but it's fairly proprietary. It's inflatable, right? So most of the Flowriders that you've seen on the back of ships or out in commercial venues, they're these concrete structures with a 2-inch padding on top of them, and then the water current goes over the top and creates that wave. This one is actually inflatable, kind of like an inflatable paddleboard, so that rigid boat design. So we can deflate it. So when it's not in use, this whole thing deflates down. And then there's Twinscapes is a company that makes those movable pool floors that we've done a bunch of designs for. They're actually creating a deck that actually goes over the top of this. So when we deflate the Flowrider, it goes away, and then we can put this cool wood deck over the top of it, so you don't have this big blue bouncy house sitting in your backyard.
Shit.
So all those pieces are going together. So that underground vault that runs the Flowrider also has all the Twinscape controls underneath, and then there's the 10 other river flow pumps that are spaced around. And then the cool thing is they also let us we've hired a fluid dynamics company that does vector analysis of water movement, and so we paid for, trying to think of the name of it now, but we basically paid these guys 20 or 30 grand, and they did a whole analysis of this whole river for us. And part of it we needed to, because the Flowrider also, it's, instead of it, most Flowriders, when you fall off the back, you just kind of get wadded up on the grate and the water just goes underneath you. This one is actually a slide into the pool, so we can use it as a slide, but 100% of that water goes into the river for us, and so it actually creates some of the current. But the concern was we got to be able to control that, right? And we got to make sure, because the river is a bypass on the pool, there is a river that goes back to the pool that goes by the Flowrider. We wanted to make sure that you wouldn't get sucked in by the Flowrider and not be able to stay in the river. And so we started doing a simple design, but the owner let us go through and do a full design of this thing. And they got this software program that runs, it's doing bazillion calculations a second. It still took like 3 days every time we make modifications to it to figure out high and low speeds and help us design a river that we could have more dynamics going on. So we've got places where we shallowed it up to go faster. We have places where we put some speed humps in it to create some rapids, and we were able to analyze how the water's going to move. And it's not logical in any way. You look at the printout, which is these either arrows or colored maps to kind of show the velocity of the water, and it never is doing what I would logically thought it was going to do. And so we were able to correct problems and locate pumps differently and angle them differently to come up with a river that's going to work really well. Because what happens on a lot of these big commercial jobs, if they don't do that, is they get these problem areas or eddies that get created and people get stuck in them. And so then they got to come back and do corrective measures. These guys are able to analyze the whole system and make adjustments, and they model the whole thing for us. And they're able to tell us how to move stuff to make it so it functions really well or increases the capacity.
And there's a tube slide. Isn't there like a 60-foot tube slide or something like that?
It's almost 90 feet. So
90 feet.
It comes off it's got a grotto, and it's got a dry and wet grotto and bar. And so on top of the second floor of the grotto, there's a tube slide that goes all the way down underground, does a full loop, and ends up in the basement looking at the shark tank.
Holy shit.
And then
I don't think I saw. Where is that?
So that one's in Paradise Valley, Arizona.
No, I mean, where's the slide on the house? I don't remember seeing
it's
it.
not on the house. It's
not
kind
on
of
the
like
house.
out on the back.
Yep. So it goes underneath the back of the swimming pool area. So in that basement rock waterfall
Like
area
on
that
the
you've
east
seen,
side of the property? Like if
Yes.
you're walking
Yep.
in.
It's buried to the east, and so it comes out of the ground behind the pavilion, but it's underground for about 75% of its ride is underground, and then it spirals and comes out in the lower pool in the basement.
What's the elevation change from the water height in that lower pool up to that weir or up to those waterfalls?
So the main pool is 17 foot deep. So, but from the negative edge wall down to the lower basement pool is about 19 feet.
So we had to plumb. It's got these big sump pumps down in the surge tank, and we had to plumb them in like 10-foot lifts because it was so deep. They had to dig this hole just to get down there. We have video of Joe going down in that 35G in the tractor, Dude, the hill getting down to even work in that Shark Tank was nuts.
Nuts. Because you think so. The Shark Tank was designed into the project early on, and then COVID started to happen. So he peeled back a little bit. So we kind of got rid of the Shark Tank, and we didn't even complete the design concepts. And they started building the basement, and then COVID didn't really impact his bottom line, and so we went back and put the Shark Tank back in. So then we had to kind of re-engineer some stuff. Well, the basement was built, so down in this lower basement area, we had to over excavate it. Then we had to shore it with piles and drill these big I-beam piles in so we could dig down another 17 feet because we actually have a surge tank. So the basement's really tall because it's so big. So the basement itself, well, the floor of the pool is 17 feet deep. So that's where the Shark Tank's at. So that's the floor of the basement. And then we had to have a surge tank below all that. So by the time we're done, we're almost 30 feet in the ground adjacent to this pool. So we've got crazy images where we shored all that and over excavated it. And then you got to think about that. You got to get dirt from 30 feet back out. So we got all these, we had to tier everything so we could even get equipment to and from and get the dirt out. And then cast this tank underground, then put a pool on top of that tank, and then connect it to the main pool of the house. So construction wise, I mean, it's definitely, leveraging every concept of abilities that we have and multiple, but tons of consultants. It's not like it's, Red Rock knows what they're doing. We hire everybody we can. So we had to bring a shoring team to do the shoring side of design. We've got a structural engineer on the pool. The house has a structural engineer. We got acrylic panel designers. We got the vector analysis guys. I mean, we're assembling, the elite team of all to kind of put all these together so that it functions when we're done.
Who designed that pool?
So we did. So not me for sure. But from zero is us. So Red Rock's team, me, Brett, Jake, Tom had a little bit of input into, like, we as a team, we continued to assemble that pool idea and create the overall concept. And the owner's awesome because he wants everything. He wanted sharks in the pool with lasers.
And that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads.
He wanted, we had bumper carts in that pool at one point. We kind of pulled them out of the concept because of safety. But he really let us just kind of go hog wild with all the ideas.
Did he give input like, I want a river, I want this, or were you guys like blank canvas?
It's been 3 or 4 years since we started the overall, so I don't know. He definitely had ideas. Don't get me wrong. I don't know which ones were whose.
Yeah.
I think we brought co-karts to the table because we had just finished doing a co-kart design. He loved that idea, and then we started the river. I think was surely his design, and I don't remember. I know the Flowrider was probably one of those stupid like, hey, let's throw a Flowrider. Those things like, can we? Sure. Like, don't, hold my beer. Let's go. You want a challenge? I'll figure it out. And so he was, he wanted, there's half the things in the pool he couldn't get that he wanted. He wanted rope swings and all kinds of stuff. And so, we had to keep it, tame enough that it's safe.
Yeah.
Commercial settings you can get a little crazier with, honestly, with those kind of things because you have supervision at all times. When you get into a residential setting, you got to be a little more careful because you got friends and neighbors and maybe nobody watching, or guys like us having beers and chatting with our friends and not paying attention. So
get run over by a bumper boat
or come off a rope swing and hit the rocks. And so we're pretty cautious when we work with clients to make sure they like, hey dude, like this is like, there's a lot going on here. I know you want all these things, but rope swing and a zip line is going to be fun for 5 minutes until someone breaks a leg. And then where are we? So, he's pretty understanding of that. He didn't want to not have those things, but he allowed us to do some pretty cool stuff.
So it's pretty much like a theme park. I mean, how easy is it to use all these things? Say he's there by himself and you want to go surf or you want to go, ride the go-karts, swim,
Most of it's pretty
whatever.
simple. The Twinscapes deck is going to be fairly simple because the controls, it's kind of like an automatic cover. You got to be inside of it, push a button, turn a key, push a button, the deck will open. The Flowrider's a little more complicated. It's got an inflation device, a deflation device. It's got adjustable speeds.
Is this on the actual Flowrider? Like, everything has its own controller?
Well, there's a control panel that controls. We're building it to control both the movable deck and the Flowrider. So they'll be their standard controller and Twinscape standard controller built into one panel, and then down inside that vault is all the components that make it happen. So it certainly he can do it by himself, but it takes a few hours to get the Flowrider up and ready to go. But the rest of it's kind of controlled by pool automation. You want to turn the river on, we control all those variable frequency drives off the automated Pentair automation, so we can talk to them, make them do what we want. The surf machine is going to take a little bit of supervision to kind of set and work with. But in theory, it's a single-handed operation if you want to be, you could get up and do all those things, but you got this much property and all these things happening. You kind of want to staff it at some level. You know, the Flowrider in our mind is going to have to be open every couple weeks, inflated, ran, deflated, put away. You know, you're going to get moisture in between layers of vinyl and stuff. You're not going to want them sitting for months on end. So all those things will have to go through kind of a serviceability, kind of like a generator kind of does an auto startup and runs once a week to move oil around and stuff. This is going to be the same way. It'll have a maintenance plan.
Yeah. Have you done flow riders before?
We haven't. We've designed 2 of them into projects that never went anywhere.
I remember one of those projects.
This is the only one that went somewhere and we got to pull it off. So, and so it'll be one of very few residential. There's a couple residential ones in the country or in the world. This is one of very few. It's also one of the very few inflatable types.
Okay, so that one I think is like right now, you know, we made a post on our JMax plumbing and it went crazy. So I think that's probably the most notable active current one.
For sure. You know, the funny thing is, you know, some of the coolest projects we've done and certainly other pool builders have done, you get into projects where you get NDAs where you can't disclose
Can't
any
even
information,
talk about
right?
'em.
So we've got a number of those too that are the really cool projects that nobody will ever know we even worked on. Some of the trades will know they've worked on them, but there's same thing with other pool builders. There's all these plenty of notable pool builders that have done maybe projects even more sick than this, but they just can't talk about them. It's kind of a gift when you get a really cool project and a cool enough client that's like, yeah, shit, show that shit off. And that happens. I guess with our clients, it's probably been 75% of the time, but there's definitely 25% of the clients that like, nope. And, or it changes, right? They start getting too much, you know, and this one's kind of one of those ones where like, hey man, let's kind of pump the brakes on the social media side. You know,
Yeah.
I go to lunch and somebody's like, man, I saw your backyard. You're like, who the frick's this guy? You know?
I mean,
So-
it going that crazy surprised us too. We're like, damn, I didn't expect like it to go. But I mean, it's a freaking crazy project.
Well, you know, you got the pool TV shows, you got the reality TV shows. I mean, that's what people want to see, you know. So it's one of those, people love their backyards. They love to see things that people, you know, rich people have. And this is just one of those that it's very odd. You know, rich people have nice cars, they have nice houses, but you can't name too many that's got shark tanks and flow riders and rivers and go-kart tracks. I mean, Justin's worked on a couple of our projects where we've got clients that have some of those other things, but it's pretty amazing to get them all kind of encompassed in one place and create one environment. And yeah, it's a theme park. It happens to be somebody's backyard, but you know, definitely have the coolest dad in the neighborhood, right? Let's
Hell
go
yeah.
go to Joe's house, man.
Yeah. Does he have kids?
He does. He's got 3 or 4. I think he's got 3 kids.
Good. All right. That makes me feel better.
Yep.
So I don't know if we can say that it's by the golf course, but are they going to be able to? Is there going to be a wall or something that's blocking?
No, we're not allowed to block it because of most of what we had to build had to be approved by the golf course because it's on a course, but there is just a view fence that has to be provided there and that stays in place. So
You imagine going by that house like,
Oh,
yeah, what
dude.
the
So I just built a house myself, and it's you know it's in the location of the neighborhood mine is pretty obvious, and so the looky loos we get just while we're under construction, I can only imagine.
What is going on?
Yeah,
in
the
this?
golf cart stop. Like everybody's like,
Yeah.
and everybody's like, I can just imagine looking, especially if there's something going on. You got events, or you got stereo playing, and you got guys on top of your grotto, and you got a flow rider. Like, yeah, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
You guys need help with anything?
Yep.
You know?
I think I lost my ball.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you mind if I come get my ball?
We go to high school together. Let me come back there real quick.
So what are your favorite features on a pool? Like what are some things that like you try and design in or some your go-tos or favorites?
You know, I think it's probably boring for most, but the one thing I think I always try to explain to people, even this pool we just talked about, you know how often he's going to use that shit?
Probably very
1% of the
infrequently.
time, if
Yeah.
that, right? So for me, it's about the visual cues and the simplicity sometimes because I want you to use your pool every day. And I learned this from the Genesis guys early on, right? That like we should make a project that they use every single day. It doesn't mean you swim every day, right? But you should be able to enjoy it every single day. And if you put all that stuff out there, the biggest thing is aesthetically, can we make that pleasing? That's kind of why we're hiding the Flowrider. It's not pleasing to look at a big jumpy house in your backyard that's blue, right? So I think the coolest projects we do and that we've been able to work on are the most simple. So whether they're Lautner edges with a lot of reflection, raised overflow. We did a job up with you, that black pool that had 2 raised bodies of water, some cantilever decks. So like in all reality, it's super complicated, but when you're done, it's just simple and it's all black. So it's like a mirror out in the desert. Luckily one year we got snow, so it was kick ass, a lot of snow reflections.
Oh, I bet.
To me, those are the things that I think people kind of don't do enough of. We did that big water wall pool that's like Las Vegas, right?
Mhm.
It's got a lazy river. It's got to me though, the water wall makes everything because
I love the water walls.
every day and all day you can sit there and enjoy that, having coffee, when someone walks in your front door, the front like, damn, what's that? Right? They immediately want to go outside. What the hell's back there? They don't want to see a lazy river. So I think to make sure you're creating something that's super artful and something you get to enjoy, whether you're sitting there. Water walls, the gentle noise is nice. Crashing waterfall in a grotto, you can't even turn it on if you're just sitting out there having coffee. It's obnoxious. But you do a couple of those subtle things, you create some cool reflections, and then if you can trick the eye, if you can do some things with water that it's not supposed to do, like the Lautner Edge where we got water at the deck and like, man, is your pool okay? Like, yeah, it's designed like that, bro. It's supposed to. You just do some simple things. It's like, makes you want to go see how it's working. So those are the coolest projects to me that make people continue to talk about how much they want to just get outside or get around it or feel it or hear it. Most pool water features and most designs are somewhat obnoxious. Even like a shear descent, 2 foot shear descent, 2 or 3 of those in the backyard. You can't turn them on if it's nighttime and you're relaxing. They're obnoxiously loud. You get a water wall where you just have water cruising down quietly. You're like, even today I put my house I just finished. We just moved in. I've got rain chains. Well, we had some frost this morning and I have a metal roof. So I go to walk outside to leave and the water almost looks like it's raining, but it's just dancing down that rain chain. But
Cool.
you just want to stop and look, and just hear it. Because water in itself, and there's books about it like Blue Mind and stuff, like it is just somehow soothing and calming no matter what it is, whether it's a little koi fish pond with a little trickling water, you're sitting by the river or lake. I remember being a kid and you like watch water about to overflow. You just want to wait till it does it, and then you just want to watch the path it takes. There's something inherently in humans that they just want to see it and feel it. The ocean's that way. Obviously, I don't care who you are. You sit at the ocean, put your feet in the sand. You're calm, dude. Right?
Yeah.
No matter what, worst thing in your life could be going on. If you're in the worst turmoil of ever, drive to the beach, man. Sit down and just sit on the beach, grab a beer. Because guess what? You can calm down, and I think water has that effect on people. And it doesn't have to be crashing. It doesn't have to be massive water features. It doesn't have to be jumping jets and like just simple water doing its thing is beautiful.
We're mostly made of water. We're born in water.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like all of the above. I was
This-
just going to say the thing about the ocean. You're totally right. I mean, so many people want to live by the water or just have dinner and have the water in the view. Most people don't necessarily get in. It's just like you feel something when you're near
You
it.
don't even know it, right? You just
Yeah.
it's good design. It's good. It's the water features. Like there's something inherently that you just have to get closer, and you don't know why. It does something to the body, and so the beauty of what we get to do is we get to kind of pull that into your backyard, but you don't even know how it's happening, but you just naturally want to get drawn, and it's part of our life, right? I mean, water is life. When early settlers, they had to be near water to live. You can't go out in the middle of the desert and say we're going to survive. You got to be next to water. It's how everything survives. It's how the plant behind you is living. It creates life, but there's something weird inherently. And like I said, there's a book called Blue Mind. That's all
It's
he
an
talks
amazing
about,
book.
right? About how it affects every single human and every life force is somehow affected by that. And it can be the simplest of things, but just hearing it, touching it, seeing it, feeling it, it changes your whole outlook on whatever's going on. And now we use water for healing, whether you're in a steam sauna or a cold plunge, or like, you think about all the ways it affects our life, but the mental side of it can be unbelievably pleasing. And you've never seen somebody sitting on the ocean beach with a chair in a bad mood. You know what I mean? Like it just changes where you're at. Yep. So that guy does a lot with Watershape University, and they work together on a lot of stuff. He goes around and does speeches. He gives this little blue ball, these little blue marbles out to everybody that comes to his speeches, because it's like, here's the earth and it's 75, 80, 90% water. Like when you're having issues, or you like think about the water, get near the water, like it for whatever reason it solves shit, man.
That's cool.
And so that's just a guy that just said, you know what, I'm gonna dig in and do more research. And he did. He put caps on people's heads and went through their mental states while they're dealing with in and out of water, near water. Like it has this tremendous effect on the human body. And so to be able to like shape that for somebody in their backyard and get enough education to do it right. We see people like want to do this massive sheer descent off their bar, hanging off the patio and crash into the pool. We're like, you won't be able to listen to that, man. It's going to get a mess everywhere. It's so loud. Like, let me talk we might do it just for effect, but if you understand the acoustics of it and the other stuff, you're like, it's not going to be soothing, man. You want to come back here and go, koi ponds are like one of the best, where you just got a little bit of trickle of water, you got a couple fish hanging around, man. You can't look at that and be unhappy,
Yeah.
right? You just got to smile. You got to put your fingers in. You want to throw some food. I don't know why, but kind of sets the day. So, well, I mean, it comes, some people are inherently better at it overall when it comes to design, but I think I sucked at design, to be honest with you, when I started it. but I started to learn from people that understand it. And when you really learn about good design, it comes down to like, there's like basic elements we talk about, which is like rhythm, scale, like some basic stuff. That scale is one of the biggest ones that people screw up all the time.
What's that? What do you mean?
Like the size of each item in relation to each other, right?
So
The
like
size,
pool too big for the yard.
well, or a walk pot too small for a column, right? I mean, some
Mm,
basics, you see this all the time. There's a 3-foot column and a 2-foot walk pot. You're like,
mm.
you don't know why it doesn't feel right, but then you see someone that does that with a 4-foot walk pot and a 2.5-foot column, and you're like, it's just like, you know what I mean? So when you get trained on that, though, and that you actually understand it, then you start to recognize. And part of the training is knowing Audible. I think Skip Phillips years ago was explaining to people to carry around a sound gauge so you could tell how loud things were, because you don't realize how loud like sheer descents might be in somebody's backyard, and you don't realize even what decibels a conversation is versus, and so that's part of the education process, to recognize that although it looks cool or you've seen it in a picture, if you were to go ask that client that actually owns it, do they enjoy it? They might not, because of how audibly obnoxious it might be. But understanding the rhythm of something, the scale of the backyard, and the size of everything correctly, like I said, you recognize good design by wanting to be a part of it, and you also you don't know why, but you can also recognize bad design. You're like, it doesn't. It could be all the same components I used over here, but somebody puts them together incorrectly and out of scale and in the wrong locations. You're like, well, it did like something wrong here. I don't feel comfortable. So I think it's a big part of the education process of understanding good quality design, and like architects and interior designers and artists have known this for years, right? And they continue to educate each other about those things and teach you about the golden segment or whatever. I'm trying to think of the right name for
The
it,
golden rule.
the golden rule, right? So there's all these basic rules that you don't even know why, but Aristotle understood it when he started, like there's like,
That's the Fibonacci's
yep,
spiral or whatever.
yep, exactly. So when you start getting an education about that, again, you might not know why, but you understand how to start, and then you start understanding. You can look at, because I look at a lot of our old stuff too, and be like, man, I like, what the fuck was I thinking, right? Or you get a client that says, I want this, and you're like, okay, I'm going to put this freaking obnoxious waterfall in your backyard that's not scaled in the yard at all. You got a 30-foot pool and you got a 10-foot tall rock waterfall. How does that work? It doesn't belong here. Number one, it's way too big for the size of the pool. Like, you got to understand how to bring that in. That pool would look 1,000 times better if the waterfall scaled correctly, or if you could find a way to change the grades in the yard so it felt like the waterfall belonged. That was this job we're working on, that huge one. That was one of the struggles we had early on, is trying to make it feel like it belonged there and wasn't this pile of rocks, and trying to balance the basement to the grotto to the pavilion. As we start scaling those together, I think when we're done, we'll pull it off pretty well. But had we just decided to put a huge rock waterfall without the pavilion next to it, it'd just be big and obnoxious, and it wouldn't feel like it belonged there. But yet it has to be tall enough to walk in there. So we scale those things around and we try to make them fit. Modeling helps a lot of that, because you can start to kind of feel what it looks like as you model it and render it. But I think the biggest part of that is being educated, and like, you can make all your own mistakes, right? I can, you can, and you get better every time. But if we sit in a classroom with 40 of us, we get to learn from 40 people's mistakes or 40 people's successes, whatever it might be. And that's the part that I think the naysayers of education, or the I've been doing it this way for 20 years guys, that won't open their minds up. Listen, I don't need to make all the mistakes. I let somebody else make them for me, so I get better the next time, and then I don't have to learn from my mistake. I can learn from yours. And if there's 30 of us doing that, then there's 100 of us doing that, then there's 1,000 of us doing that. If you look at projects that come out of, that are in the front pages of magazines and resorts and those kind of things, it's not the crazy, insane backyard from some guy in Florida, right? It's the properly designed, subtly set up, well balanced, perfectly scaled environment that someone wants to be in. And that didn't happen accidentally, right? Somebody had to learn and be trained to make it right. And sometimes it took multiple people to get it right. But that's the difference between really good design and construction and just throwing all the parts at the paper. And then the backside of that, we've talked about these. We've got plenty of guys that we see that their design concepts are freaking awesome. I mean, there's pool builders in this valley that some of their concepts, and I see model homes, and I'm like, God damn, that's awesome. That, like, man, those guys killed it. But I also use that pool when they build it to sell my pools, because I can walk them back there and watch them how they screw up the technical side of it. It might look bitching on paper and even in from 10 feet away or in the front of the house, but I've done that a number of times. That big black perimeter overflow pool we talked about with the reflections, that home is in a subdivision that had a pool builder. That the concept in the model center is awesome. And he was between me and those guys. And I said, can we meet you at the model center? He goes, well, I've already seen that pool. I said, no, I want you to see it the way I see it. And I walked him back there, and we walked around and looked at the pool, and I pointed out all the technical problems that pool has that could have easily been overcome. And I was way more expensive than the other pool builder, for sure. But as soon as he saw how many things didn't work and how things were starting to degrade already on that project, he was like, man, yeah, I'm like, conceptually, amazing. Maybe better than the work we do. But without knowing how to make it work, it's a failure dramatically. And before they ever sell that place, they got to rebuild it. And I've seen that same builder in multiple subdivisions, and I've used their pools to sell my pools more than once because I can take them back there. And once you point it out, like, oh shit, yeah, that's terrible. Yep. This, they're like, damn, this isn't working right. Here, the pool equipment, it's screaming. You're like, you can point out all those things and they're like, oh, I get it. I want to pay you.
Yeah, you were talking about education. How much do you rely on like manufacturers, representatives? Like, say you wanted to do the Flowrider and you never dealt with it before, installed one before, you don't know anybody that knows much about them, but you reach out to the company. Is that usually how you
Yeah, I
figure
mean,
things
that's a
out?
pretty exclusive type of item that there's only one option, right? I mean, there's nobody else going to build a flow rider except for going to the guys at Whitewater that build the flow rider. So, but when it comes to just about any odd, they Whitewater did our slides too. Same thing. We conceptually throw it together, but they've got it modeled so it works, and I'm not going to. I don't know, we've done 7 slides since inception, right? They've done hundreds and thousands probably. So we certainly rely on them. Here's our idea. Can we make it work? Nope. You got to change this. You got to do this. Now we got to flex sometimes too. That big slide we're doing, it's shown in our renderings. It's designed 1,000 different ways underground. But as soon as they're getting ready to ship our slide, they put all this information that says it can't be buried. Like, what do you mean it can't be buried? Well, yeah, this slide can't be buried. Like, it's obviously buried, right? I mean, you guys have our models, you have our renderings, you've helped us put them into our model. How else am I building the slide? So it took us, we got to create a box culvert and all kinds of shit to make it work. We still had to rely on them for making the slide safe and function, but we had to go outside their normal circle to say, well, we're burying it. How can we bury it? Bring in different engineers because they wouldn't let me bury the slide, even though it was already shit we had purchased at this point. They
You
just
had to build a concrete tunnel around it.
absolutely, we wrapped it in concrete basically because there's no other way to do this, guys. It's going underground. So, so it takes a team, right? It takes a group effort. And it also takes maybe, either some creativity or some balls to say, well, we're going to figure it out and just get it done. But it at all levels. And we rely on manufacturers for sure. We certainly rely on them on setting materials and thin sets and plastering and all those things. And then and we rely on education for design, engineering, construction because it's available. If you're not getting it, it's because you don't care or you don't want it, right? It's out there. Just go get it. You won't have to try to get the guy to do the plumbing right if he's taking a plumbing class and understands hydraulics. You won't have to teach, like you look at a shotcrete nozzleman. He might be nozzle certified. Most of them aren't, but even if he is, he still doesn't understand concrete. He doesn't understand the transitions from a floor to a wall. He understands how to stand behind the nozzle and how to apply it to a location. But if you can help educate him on why we would shoot the cove first as we go up the wall, so when we pull the trimmings off, they don't end up in the cove, which is the most structural part of the whole project. They don't understand that. They do it every day, and it performs most of the time. But when it doesn't, it's terrible. If they'll learn the benefits and the science behind the concrete and the science behind why we want stronger concrete, even though engineering says we don't need it stronger. Well, it's not about engineering strength. It's about protecting the steel and protecting the structure. It's much more durable to be higher density. Here's why, and here's why I want to do it that way. They start to figure out, most shotcrete companies hate 4,000, 5,000 PSI mud. Some won't even touch it.
Because it's heavy, right?
Well, it's more hard to work with, right? So it tends to go off quickly. So when you're shooting shotcrete, we're plowing concrete against a wall, and then we got to kind of wait till it's just right to start trimming it and shaping it, right? 3,000 PSI mud does it at a certain rate, and it gives you more working time. 4,000 and 5,000 PSI mud, like it's not ready. Oh, too late.
It's like the banana.
Yeah,
You ever
it's
see that, like
almost
the
ripe,
banana?
almost ripe, almost ripe. Now it's old.
Yeah,
right?
like you ever see a banana, you leave it on your counter, and it's like not ripe, not ripe, not ripe, and it's ripe for 10 seconds and then black.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Pretty much.
You looked
yeah.
at me like, what the hell is he talking about? Yeah.
Banana?
So that's what happens with 4,000 and 5,000 PSI concrete. And so, again, you got to adapt to it. But most shotcrete guys, and I get people call me all the time. Hey man, I took your class last week and we understand we're supposed to use this shotcrete. My guy won't do it. He just tells me no. Get it. So let's try it. Let's educate him. Let's explain to him why. And he doesn't want to. It's harder. No doubt. But we've had projects even with Justin I've offered when we've got projects where he can't get to or didn't have time. Like, can I give you some labor? Can I help? Like, what can we do so we can get there? We do the same thing with shotcrete guy. I've never done shotcrete in my life. Some people would consider me an expert in shotcrete. I don't have a clue. I've never stood behind a nozzle. I know all the science. I know how to do it right. I have spent time trimming pools because we're losing the pool and they don't have the guys, and I'm in there with everybody else digging out pipes and prepping stuff is where I can put myself into it. But you gotta have empathy for what they're dealing with too, and figure out how you solve it. And so it's better to do it this way. It's truly the right way to do it. So how do we find a way to get there? And you got to help them, educate them, and then sometimes they'll take off, sometimes they won't. And when the ones that won't, we don't work with very often, but we do on a pinch. And the other ones are open to improving what they do, and they do it better.
Is there anything you've ever maybe thought of, came up with, designed, but you haven't been able to build?
I haven't figured out the details of it, but I've definitely thought through. I want to, and I'm doing my own pool. I haven't started yet, but I even wanted. The other day I was thinking I want to put it in there. I want to create a black hole in a pool. Like I want to have a
Like
couple.
we did one like that.
Yeah, like I've seen them, but I haven't done it, and I think technically I think I can work it out. But the concept of having this empty vessel inside of another vessel that's reflective, and like the things you could create with that looks really cool to me. And we've done very similar to that, but I feel like I haven't exercised what we could do with it. You know what I mean? And do it right.
It's a cool concept, like to put that in there. Like, isn't there like some dams that are built like that to water control overflow?
Yep, for sure. And so it just creates this super cool effect. And it obviously got to be careful in safety and stuff, but it's kind of cool to see this. We've done an island of a tree out in the middle that we've done a linear Lautner edge detail to where the water's just disappearing, but the dirt's at the same level. We've done some really cool stuff that way. I feel like, if I could find a way to make water go uphill, like I've seen that done in like an acrylic panel, right? Wet's done some of that. Yeah. There's some of those technical achievements I like to play with hydraulically. But I feel like I don't know too many things that somebody hasn't given us the opportunity to do it. Many of them have been hard to figure out, and we've had to bring in other people to figure out, even from a Dave Peterson to even you or whatever. But I feel like I've been blessed enough to where I have yet to see a concept we haven't done some sort of. But I feel like we could do something different with that might be different enough to where, like, kind of like we floated the coping off that spa. It's pretty simple, but like I've only seen it done by me, and then I've seen a couple other people try to do it and fuck it up. And it's not like I did anything expert. They just didn't have the money that this client had to do it right.
Yeah.
And so when you get those chances, you're like, oh yeah, we got to do this right. But I haven't yet run into. I can't think of one that at least somebody didn't give me some chance to do.
So the one you want to do? I'm gonna throw it at you. Okay, we might have to do it at my house.
Okay.
Have you seen a piano key weir?
So that is it like this guy here?
Yeah.
So we did something very similar, but not like that. But that is awesome. You want to do one that's actually piano keys though, and shaped like piano?
Piano key or a labyrinth weir.
Right.
I think there's a labyrinth weir there. I think that's the sickest. But here's how I want to do it. I want to do 2 pools.
Okay.
And I want to put it like a zipper.
Okay.
And I want underneath the piano keys, I want that to be the basin. So it's like a spa underneath, like a long linear spa. And I think imagine if you lit those 2 pools up 2 different colors and they come together and the keys interlace.
Are they gonna kind of get farther apart and come together?
I don't know. I haven't thought that far into it. But like see how they have like that, might go back to the piano key. They have like a void underneath.
Uh-huh.
How sick would that be to be like you're chilling, you're lounging, or you're in a spa, or maybe you shrink that down a little bit? I think that look is crazy.
That is very cool. That's very cool. And it would be cool. I like the idea of like lacing them together.
Yeah.
I almost feel like you should have it come together like a zipper. So like you could see them and then
That's slick.
tightens up. And then, that would be cool. That's a cool look.
Is this real or is this a concept?
They use the labyrinth weir. It's water control like at a dam, and they use it for a specific reason. I was reading about it a little bit. You have more linear foot of spill edge, and that has some advantage in the application that they're using it.
Well, because when you get too much weir flow, you can get all kinds of damage from water. Like the water does destructive damage over time, right? So it's very erosive over time. I wonder if they're doing that to spread that out to be a much thinner flow. That's pretty slick though. I like that idea.
So
Let's go.
If we see that pop up anywhere, we'll know they heard it here. But
Yeah.
that's the one.
Somebody put a patent on that shit right now.
I think that would be so slick. The options are crazy, and even the labyrinth weir I think is really cool. It's got like that star flower or
Yep.
that star look is sweet.
See if the dude from Target, the big wig, wants
Let's just build
something else
another pool.
done.
Yeah, let's do another one, right? So I
I
don't know what he's
listening to
doing.
your podcast.
I don't know what he's
and,
doing nowadays, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's. I mean, look, you look at the guys at Wet, you look at the Aria wall, like people, you know, and look, almost everything everybody does is some sort of adaptation or mirroring of somebody else's idea. That big water wall pool we did it's Aria, dude. We saw Aria.
Yeah.
We stole that concept. I don't only steal that concept. Cool story is that literally I went to Aria to research that pool to figure out, because I'm like, why do I need to figure this out? They know the angle of the wall, they know the type of stone to use. I mean, these guys killed it, right? So literally the weekend before is the Boston Marathon bombing that I'm going out to there to do this investigation. So I meet with the managers there. I'm trying to get on top because they can also send this water back and forth, right? So I want to see what they did up there, and like no access, nobody can have access. Like we all the security's got everything shut down. Nobody can go anywhere. Everybody's like freaked out because of this Boston bombing. So, but I have like an angle gauge with me. I've got all this stuff because I want to measure this wall, and I'm like, so I'm literally, I'm taking my shoes off. I literally would start walking. I'm like, somebody's gonna fucking take me down, right? Because like everybody's on like edge, but I just want to get like an angle of the wall. I want to get some measurements and stuff. So my wife's with me, so we're just kind of like roll my pants up and I kind of climb out there and I check the measurement real quick. We do a couple things, but I was hopeful they'd let me see how it operates, and I'm sure if I did enough, if I had enough resources ahead of time, I might have been able to, but we never got to see the top of their wall. But we did get the angle of the wall. We saw how they, the stone detail, how they installed it. We basically found the same stone. We installed the same angle, and did all the things because somebody had already went through the R&D to get that to work. And we've done R&D too for projects we've never seen before, to make sure it works. And often you need to do that because, water does its own thing. You can math it, you can calculate, you can guess it, but that shit does its own thing sometimes. So sometimes you got to actually put it in process. So, but that was, someone else had already done the R&D. So we kind of just mimicked that idea, and then we kind of replicated that wall. We levitated a deck, we changed it, but that concept works awesome. And the reality is we had designed that pool with automation into it. I don't know if you remember, you plumbed it, right? So did you plumb through it?
No, we didn't plumb that one.
So we have it all set up in the way we thought it was going to work to create this automation. And we had talked to Wet Designs about designing the valving system for us, but we had plumbed it to do that. But to be honest, it's so fucking badass just running quietly or even a little bit higher speed. You don't need it to do anything, man. You light it right. And even that, like the lighting on that, we put all kinds of different lighting systems up, down, below, side to side. We came up, finally, we had to put a valance across the whole top of that water wall. We didn't plan to do that. But once we started trying to light it, that was the only place that you wouldn't walk up and get blinded by it, or it really reflected correctly, or wasn't going to get damaged from the water, was to put it on top. And so we had to come back with the concept of putting the valance up and put the lighting system in. But all those things, when you look at what it takes to make that work, it's a lot, man. It's not just, oh, I see a picture, we'll build the wall. It's a trip to Vegas. Get the real details. Start putting those details in place. Mock the wall up. We had to build. We kind of put some plywood sections in the weir inside our upper basin so we could get water to flow, so we could check how much water we needed to, because we couldn't tell what the weir flow needed to be. So we had built a box to do that. We had done a couple things to find out what was going to work the best, and then we started messing with lighting. So I do the same thing. Had to kind of once we had the thing in place, we mocked some lights up. We turned it on at night. It's not doing what we want. We need to change the angle. We need a different style of light to get it to function. It's a lot of work, but and we get the right clients. That client, honestly, that job, he was a big part of that. He was open to that. He was helping us with it. He had a lighting designer on his house, so he brought that guy in. We, as a team, kind of came together to get that to work.
It turned out great. The pictures are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that angle and texture and lighting, all of that stuff is crazy.
It doesn't work without it. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You think it works, it doesn't. We actually did a big commercial feature, and they basically copied this idea, but they had white stone on it. And we're like, it won't work with white, guys. It's a bad idea. And we talked, because the black with a white water effect is what you're seeing. Once you go to white background with white water, you can't tell it's happening. You can't see it unless you're lighting it up. But this was a commercial venue, so it's going to be a daytime only. It's an office complex. So luckily I was building a water wall, not the big one you've seen, but a different project. And we had that wall in place already. So we mocked up 2 sections with a dark and light stone, and we brought the architects out, and we brought the design team out. It's a $600 million project they're working on. So we bring this team out to show them, and we proved to them it needs to be black.
that
They s-
Marina Heights?
yeah, they still go white. And then the other crazy thing is everything around it is black except for the wall. Well, what what's going to go wrong if everything around the feature is black? It's all going to get water on it and become white.
Turn white.
Exactly.
They
So
did that backwards.
yeah, we're begging them like, guys, it won't work this way. Like you get this, and it's I haven't seen it since I was there probably 6 months after it was open. And it was already looking terrible.
I used to go to the gym that was there.
Yeah, I don't usually tell people we built that job because
I tell everyone, I'm like, have you seen this?
but conceptually we knew better and we could prove, and we showed them it would, like, why not to, and they still wouldn't listen to us. And even they also they got these angled walls, but they're going out, but they have these outside corners, which, like, we can't get water here, guy. Like, we need to put some plinth or something. No, it'll work. We'll put more water. We'll lower the wall. I'm like, it won't go uphill, guys. And I know it's going downhill, but we literally showed them a number of projects that had a similar concept that doesn't work. And the architect was one of those guys that it's his way. We don't know what we're talking about. We're stupid pool guys. So we built their project just like he wanted it. And I think he's impressed with it. And I think the owner was okay with it, but we hate it. I mean, we knew it was going to suck. It has sucked. And our name's on it. You're like, don't put our name on this thing. And this exact problems we expected. It's white. So the outside corners stay dry, but they're damp enough to where they grow moss and mold and bullshit. So it's green and nasty, where it's not getting wet all the time. And all the adjacent structures that the weir wall lays or the wall lays up against are black, and they get stained and it's black stained concrete. So it's not even a durable surface like granite or porcelain you could clean. So the last time I saw it was only like 6 months old. It looked like dog shit already.
That sucks.
And you got it. Like, the one thing, if you build anything with water, like, water is destructive beyond belief. You got a small leak in a shower, it destroys a house because of mold, mildew, and if you don't see it, but it goes where it wants to. And it's so destructive to surfaces and finishes, and it's either corrosive or erosive, right? It either cuts holes into stuff, or it builds up scale on stuff, one or the other. It's going to do either one of those things to reach its balance. And if you don't accommodate those things, we see us we do these wick channels when we do negative edges and weir walls, because most people don't, but it creates this horrible look if you don't. Right. So we're like, why do we keep repeating stupidity? It looks like shit 6 months later. So let's build a way to control that water and hide that buildup. So we create these little wick channels we build that wraps any one of our negative edge pools or any of these water walls, and it makes 95% of it go away, but it looks brilliant all the time instead of terrible. And same thing with, like, your
What
basic.
exactly is that?
So whenever you have a water wall or a negative edge, it usually abuts a wall at some point, right? And that's kind of what stops the water wall and contains the water. Well, the water kind of digs into that wall and builds up on that wall over time because it's just transient, right? It wet and dry, it builds up a lot of scale, or it'll start damaging the wall because of its stone or something. It'll start getting behind the stone. Well, we build a stainless steel drip edge basically that wraps up inside and has like a drip angle on it. So the water can't get all the way around it. We'll get some splash out, but for the most part, it hides all that and doesn't create all this buildup on the side wall that ends the negative edge. And it's a fairly simple detail, but hardly anybody. I've seen a number of people starting to do that now, and I don't know that we created that detail. I think we might have, but surely somebody had it before me. But it hides all that scale and buildup because it doesn't let the water walk around. Because water on that adjacent wall is almost at a 45-degree angle where it hits the grout line, and then it travels a little bit farther, and it's wet and dry all the time. In the summers here, scale builds up dramatically, and it just looks terrible.
Dude, that's a super smart idea, because a lot of the pools we used to take care of in Troon had negative edge.
Yep.
And all the corners
Look
are
like
like that
shit.
white,
Yep.
like
Toast.
nasty.
Well, it's no different.
Yeah.
You see the spa spillway to a pool on 100 projects, right? Have you ever seen one? First of all, they don't take any time to make that detail. They just make a notch in the beam. They run their tile another half-inch out or something, and water spills off that edge. But everything adjacent to it looks like dog shit in 6 months. And I don't care, unless you're out there every week with a wire brush or with a stainless brush and CLR to keep the scale off. It looks terrible. But we should just keep repeating that forever. And if you look at it, you talk to pool builders that build thousands of pools a year, 100 of them have it. And you look at it 6 months later or 2 years later, it looks terrible. But yet we just continue, right? Nobody like, hey, can we do that differently? Oh yeah, probably, but let's just do that. Right? And you're a service guy, you see that, hey, can we clean that tile? Yeah, but we got to either bead blast it or we got to use acid on it. And it's a lot of extra work, and you don't pay me extra work for that. I'm here for 23 minutes to get your pool done. That's it. But yet we just keep repeating that process because we're pool builders, and we leave, and you get stuck with it on a service side. So That's the kind of stuff I as an industry, I hate that we don't look at something like that and say, there's probably a different way to pull off that exact same thing. Maybe we should find a solution, but we just don't.
All right, Rick. One of my favorite questions to ask everybody is, because we're all in the pool business, we've all seen crazy amounts of pools. Favorite pool you've been to? Not built. Earlier was favorite pool you built. Favorite pool you've been to?
Been to.
Can be vacation, one you
Yeah, I'm trying
visited.
to. Yeah, but so. That's a tough question. I should have thought through it more. I'm trying to like. Again, it comes down to. So I have this place. I'm not even gonna tell you where it is because they're all you fuckers will start going. But I have this place down in Mexico I go to that's got this little tree house, and me and my wife stay there on occasion. And it's got its own little private pool, little acrylic edge, hangs out over this body of water. Nobody can see you, but you can see almost everything the way the trees are encompassing it. But it's just this tiny little body of water, nothing going on. Got a little broken wooden stump that lets the water flow out of it. But it couldn't be simpler. But yet, like, you're begging to get in it when you get, like, you just, the minute you get there, you want to be there, because it's got the right views. It's simple. It's basic. I mean, it's no big commercial pool or anything. It's literally a third of the size of this room.
It's in the treehouse?
It's in the treehouse up in the trees. And
in Mexico?
In Mexico.
So this is not Rocky Point.
This is not Rocky Point. It's not even some special. I'll tell you off air. I don't want too many people running there. So
right. We're not getting a sponsorship from that place.
That's right, for sure. We won't. I've already told too many people, but
you're just gonna go. There's gonna be a bunch of pool service T-shirts, and
there's gonna be a follow up to this episode. Rick's.
What's up, Rick?
Picks.
Yep. So I'm trying to think of commercial pools or that. I mean,
no, that's good. I think that's great.
I mean, the other thing is the water features. I think the ones I've seen the best of is the Aria water feature, both the wall and the explosive water feature in the courtyard. Right? You've seen the one that has the jumping jets hitting each other. The technical side of trying to pull that off and get these laminar jumping jets to land where they're supposed to, hit each other where they're supposed to, and work with music and timing and light. The technical side of that is brilliant when you look at what it took to make that happen. And I think that's whenever I see someone pull off a technical side of achievement or something that makes it, and I think the other one that probably most important to me it's Goldstein Sheets, which is a Lautner project, is where we got the Lautner edge detail from, right? So that's a home in LA. The house is fucking sick as hell too, but that's where that pool edge was done. That we all try to replicate. That's
the Lautner.
The Lautner edge, not the negative edge, not the knife edge, the Lautner edge detail. That was again an architect that had this idea, and I would guess the first time it was done, it sucked. It probably didn't work. They really didn't math through it all, but the idea was there. And now we've kind of all as a group of professionals, everybody's got their own way to do it, but we've now perfected how to do that edge detail. That is the edge detail to me that I think is the slickest, smoothest. Anybody can make your pool look like it's about to overflow and it's not, and you could swim in it and use it and it functions really well. That to me is pretty cool. It's not a raised perimeter overflow. It's just this perfect puddle of water and if you do dark interiors when it's reflecting the trees behind you and the architecture, I mean, that's the coolest of all. We've done a couple of those where the architecture sits right inside it, and we've got the Lautner that wraps right around the pool itself, and it just sits like it sits on top of that water, and then you have a reflective quality. I mean, that's super technical achievement, and it could be a basic little puddle.
I think what you said earlier about as being a kid, like you see water that's about to overflow, and you just wait for it. My favorite thing are any sort of weir edge, but yeah, Lautner is up there.
Yep. It's just a detail that hardly any guys pull off correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's done right, man, it's this subtle detail, especially like I said, when it's touching the architecture sometimes too, where it's literally in it, like it just creates a detail. And so like, don't move off that picture, but like, it looks to me like that's probably a Lautner on top. At bed and Lester, I'm sure it is. But if you go down 2 below it, same thing comes up, but that's not a Lautner edge, right?
Yeah,
the one in the middle down below, that's
right?
A perimeter overflow where you see the coping in the water.
Yeah.
So that edge that gets called a Lautner all the time. It's not.
I try and explain that to people all the time. Yeah, it's got to look like the whole edge has to be hidden under the coping.
Yeah, because you got to step on that or slip on that. The other problem with that edge is birds.
Oh, they sit there and just shit.
So birds are the funniest thing. They won't go in water. If there's any step to the water, they won't touch it. But you put it like a beach entry, or you put that shallow detail, and then they just wade in that shit. And if you got, once the ducks find or anything else, they'll sit there and play. But the Lautner detail is one of the cleanest of all.
Have they remodeled at all that original Lautner pool that John?
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, Tischerman got involved at one point. It could have been Skip Phillips. I might be wrong, but one of those guys had to get re-involved and I think re-level that pool to correct it.
What pool?
The Goldstein sheets.
Oh.
My history might be incorrect, but I'm fairly certain that was the first Lautner edge detail, and I think
That's the one that was like really white, right? There's like a picture of a girl sitting at the diamond at the triangle tip by the steps. It's in LA on the hill. No,
it's underneath
it
this
might be that
crazy
one,
roof.
but-
Look up gold. Type in gold. There you go. There's the roof. So click on that picture right there. So you got to
yeah, that's the one. There's a famous, well, not a famous picture. There's a picture of a girl sitting by the steps somewhere.
go to the bottom, the one in the middle on the left.
Is
There
it
you go.
black and white? The one you're thinking of, Justin?
That's probably the
No, it's color.
most iconic picture of that. Oh, you can't blow it up, obviously, but
That's weird that one's not popping up.
The one with the girl.
so
Yeah.
at some point in time, either Tischerman or Skip Phillips had to go out there and I think fix that edge or work on that edge. And so
John Lautner.
John Lautner is an old Frank Lloyd Wright guy. Did a ton of amazing shit. He also did some really terrible shit.
Really?
Eventually. But well, kind of like Frank Lloyd Wright. He's
I was
got some
gonna
cool
say, just
concepts.
like
He's also
Frank
got some
Lloyd
real
Wright.
shitty ones. I think Lautner was a better individual. Frank Lloyd Wright was kind of a POS, but he's got something called the, I don't know, it looks like a spaceship. I'm trying to remember the name of the house, but it's also in LA, and it's the biggest, ugliest piece of crap you've ever seen. Doesn't, it looks like a water tower stuck on the side of a hill. Probably inside it's cool, but like this house, when you look at it, like there's some details of this house that are killer. Just nobody's ever done. The skylights, those little skylights that are on top of that roof, there's all these little eyeballs through it that are these little dots of light. They're actually drinking glasses cast into the concrete.
Sick.
And so they cast those in. And so each one of those openings, if you look up in that little triangle, there's like 6 little dots of light from this when the sun comes through. And it's just, super simple. He literally just cast these little drinking glasses into the roof everywhere, but he came up with this bitchin' look, and it probably still looks perfect today.
So good.
But stuff people weren't doing. You look at the span of that thing and the way that waffle slab's put together, and that's some dude's house,
Crazy.
Is that the same house pool from? Was that in Big Lebowski?
It might have been. He's had a couple of his houses. He's got another one that's been in some of the James Bond movies for sure.
You know
I
what
noticed
cool-
it till now, but looking at that furniture and the way that it's all set up,
Well, the funny thing is he took a cue from Frank Lloyd Wright. These guys are so arrogant, right? Part of the Frank Lloyd Wright deal over time is he quit putting furniture in houses. He started building it in because he used to get pissed off when he go back to the house and they move the shit around, right? So in his mind, he designed it to sit a certain way, and the furniture belongs where it belongs, the way he lays the house out. So like Frank Lloyd Wright started doing, Lautner built all his shit in like this, so you can't move the furniture. It's
That's
designed to
cool.
be
I
my
actually
way.
really like that look.
It's cool, but like it wasn't because they wanted the look. It was because this is the way the house gets set up, and this is the way. And they're right. I mean, honestly, architecturally, they built it a certain way. They want it that way, and it does suck when you put a big ass project together and you make it all badass, and then you show up with somebody like, the fuck happened here? Somebody threw up with all these tchotchkes and shit hanging around the house. Like, oh my god.
Like, I'm 6'5". This is not gonna work.
One thing I'll say really quick, we got to work on a pool that was being remodeled, and it was have you seen the L. Ron Hubbard pool in Phoenix?
I don't know if I have.
So L. Ron Hubbard had some house, I think he had several, but there was some house, and the pool was shaped like this.
Just a V.
It was freaking crazy.
Could you
and
even
it
use
wasn't
it?
just like a rectangle, it was like this, and then it kind of went around the corner.
How
Could you walk
tell?
through it, or you just fall in when you get into it? You slip.
I
to the
have
bottom?
no idea how people got in and out of this pool. But I remember we were doing the remodel and we were doing new FAs on the returns, and the returns were level. And so you had like this ugly chunk of like concrete around the eyeballs. But it's crazy.
Oh.
Yeah, dude, it was nuts. But it was L. Ron Hubbard's one of his houses.
Like, this looks so cool. It looks like one of those single pizza boxes where it's like lifting off
Yep.
like the roof. Looks
Yeah,
like
there's some details of that
cover
house
it.
when you study the architecture of that house that he just
That's cool.
unbelievably cool.
Very unique.
There's a bathroom in that house. I think it's this house that's all the sink and the wall and everything's glass, and even the sink's glass, and the faucet comes out of the wall, but like the whole drain system, everything's all glass. I think it's that house,
That's sick.
but it's probably the worst thing ever if you got to take care of it and clean it, right? But it's just okay. It looks bitchin'. It's killer. It's like their powder bath, piece of furniture.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's done like I said, he's done some of his stuff. He's one of my favorite architects. I study a lot of what he did, but he got a couple different. He's never had money, always broke. One project to the next. Every project went $1 bazillion over budget. Just like couldn't understand business at all because I think that half of his brain doesn't work. But you can tell the other side was on steroids, right? Because the creativity is just off the charts. And then he'd do a couple though that were just terrible. and Frank Lloyd Wright did the same thing. There's plenty of Frank Lloyd Wright stuff that was so far ahead of his time and so amazing, and they're like, the hell is that?
That's cool.
Trying to trick something that didn't work,
Yeah.
but or trying to be too unique.
Can you suggest, like, for somebody that wants to get into construction or building pools, like, what's one of your favorite classes?
So if you're in the pool world or want to get in the pool world, there's two aspects of what I think you need to be involved in it, and one's design and one's construction, right? So the first thing you need to do is know how to build them. I mean, the design side's fun and different, but you got to take hydraulics and you got to take construction. And there's two classes that are the construction side for me. I had a lot of construction experience and actually a reason out of the education. So the first time I took construction, I was still kind of blown away, but not at a level that the hydraulic side blew me away. Like I had been looking for hydraulic information on pools and understanding it better. And like I said, the construction side was a refresher and a lot of new stuff because it was very construction or pool based. But when I got in the hydraulic class that like David Peterson teaches, that is his basic or advanced hydraulics, like the amount of information that gets provided in 24 hours is you couldn't put a dollar amount to it. I mean, it's priceless. You get software, you see all these things you've been working on all these years trying to figure out like the nuances of it. It's really basic, but until someone shows you why it's so basic, like when you try to size a surge tank, like you can't, it's tough to figure that out. Nowadays it's pretty easy with Google to get some basic information, but when he walks you through the path and then hands you software that you can type in all the parameters of your pool and it shits out the information, you're like, really? And then especially if you're dealing with like round tanks that are much harder to figure out volumes and levels, what level it should be set at and where the level autofill should be at. When you can run that through a program and it drops it on you, like that amount of information and in 24-hour class, every pool builder should be required to take that class because that changes your understanding of hydraulics, pipe sizing, plumbings, pumps. There's only a few municipalities we work in, we design kind of across the country now. There's only a few that even care about hydraulics. Even commercial pools are a little bit heavier done, but there's plenty of commercial and most residential cities could give a flying shit about hydraulics in any way. Even though there's always requirements, they don't even ask. You got to put equipment in a little box on the page and show where the pool's at, and they're worried about setbacks, and that's, I think, end of list. That's about all they care about, right? And then but just that little bit of information trains you, and I think scares you into knowing that you don't know shit, and you better get your butt in the classroom and start figuring some stuff out. And if anybody that wants to take their pool skills, even if they're a great pool builder and if they've been doing it for 10 years, but if they want to start doing really tough dynamic details and the perimeter overflows, the Lautners, the gutter pools, the rooftops and stuff like that, those classes just become priceless. That gives you all the information and the confidence to walk in, look at a set of plans, help them correct it, or more importantly, you learn from these instructors like Dave Peterson who can help you design all that shit. Now you have a resource, you call him, he does the design work, you can build it, you look like the expert. So there's no limit to what you can learn out of those groups. And like I said, there's two different groups doing it on a regular basis now, but the basic construction and the hydraulic courses are awesome. And I haven't seen what Genesis is doing for hydraulics today, and I don't want to beat up them, but the Dave Peterson's hydraulics there's nothing better. You couldn't touch it if you wanted to, and they don't have the time if they had 10 people working on it to recreate what he already created. So that for me, that's the class you have to take, and you have to take it from them. I'm certain that the guys at Genesis are still doing a great job of teaching construction and all the aspects. And then there's that whole other avenue, which is design, which is teaching you about, like we talked earlier, rhythm and scale. Like that's what makes your backyard feel comfortable and what makes people look at your designs and gets them on the front of a magazine is not because you knew the hydraulics or how to build it. It's also you understand the aesthetics and what makes it feel right. And it makes it fit, and it makes you start to respect and understand architects and the styles they're working with and not fuck up their cool projects. Their projects sometimes are awesome, and then the pool builder comes in and screws it up because he talks the owner into a rock waterfall in the back of this modern contemporary home, probably because he's too scared to try the Lautner edge detail that was sort of on the drawings, So I think that teaches you to respect that as well.
Sure. And where can people find you, like your company?
So obviously we're Red Rock Contractors and Red Rock Pools, but on the education or the help side, we do manage and mentor the Ask the Masters Facebook page, and we do a number of podcasts. We haven't done a lot of it late because we're very busy, but me and Dave Penton and Randy Beard own and manage that Ask the Masters side. And to be honest with you, it's its own animal at this point. You can drop a question on that site and you'll have 20 answers from 100 other people, not even us, to some of your questions. And it for the most part, it's come extremely helpful. I think many people get in there and get good answers to their questions, or they find, they're looking for, hey, I got an acrylic panel pool. Who do I call? And within minutes, you got 2 or 3 people throwing numbers at you, or, hey, I got a hydraulic question, or I got a concrete. Look at, here's a core drilling. I got a concrete. Is this, what should I be looking for? You get so much information off that site, and the responses it's unbelievable how much interaction on that page we get, even with us as the admins on that page. We're doing the least amount of the work now. There's so many other helpful parts that other people's in the industry are giving the info to. Justin goes on there and answers stuff. We got people from all walks of life that come in and put answers to that page, to help impart their knowledge and help everybody else.
Yeah, totally. Check it out. Even the YouTube channel. I mean,
Yep.
some of that stuff is timeless. There's stuff videos on there from 3 years ago, that is still applicable. And
Yeah, for
anybody
sure.
can use it.
I think we've done about 50 different video podcasts where we've either done pool profiles or project detail profiles. We started out early. We were doing a lot of just interviewing guys. And not that people weren't somewhat interested in that, but we weren't really providing enough, you know what I mean? And so we learned that we wanted to start talking about issues and problems and corrections and projects, and that got the most amount of interest. And like you said, there's a number of them on acrylic panel install, there's some on glass tile install, there's some on construction on difficult sites. And so it's a good 20-minute, 30-minute view. And it's funny, as I get homeowners once in a while, or pool builders calling me because they want us to help maybe design a pool because their homeowner Googled acrylic panel pools and they found our YouTube video, which drove him to the pool builder to call us to get involved. So, but you're right. There's some decent timeless information on there. I think we've had Justin do a couple with us too to talk about pools and hydraulics. So, what we need to do is do more of that, because I think it's good long-term timeless information. Waterscape University also does Wednesday webinars where they talk about a lot of different stuff. Those are all as well online. You can usually source them through their site and research them. And they've got topics of maintenance, construction, service, design. They do all kinds of different little 30-minute webinars that are free too, that are worthwhile for sure.
Awesome.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Anytime.